This is the Board of Selectmen meeting for April 15, 2014. Want to see if necessary the Board of Selectmen may meeting to discuss pending litigation. And I guess we're going to figure that out during the meeting, are we? At the beginning...
Why will we discuss extension, purchase, and sale if you can determine whether you want to get involved with a further discussion or not?
Okay, so that's about Redgate Farm. We want to take a moment at the beginning to express our appreciation for our servicemen and women who are serving in Afghanistan. And I guess I would also add today that this is the one-year anniversary of the bombing at the Boston Marathon. That we all want to We have to announce that this meeting is being recorded. We're going to start with an appointment for an all-alcohol license application from Pedro Laredo, DBA Antara Peruvian Cuisine, located at 1 Green Street.
Good evening, everybody.
Hello. Do you want to present your request?
Sure. My name is Pedro Laredo. I live in Walpole. I recently I've been blessed by many people that have come to the restaurant. My family and I decided to do this a long time ago, an opportunity. Goal as an owner is to ensure the quality of the food that I provide in the service. However, in this type of business and the people that have come into the restaurants, they ask me is BYOB. It's never my set up. My limitations are very broad. There's only so many people that I can ask to come to the restaurant. People from Sherborne, Dover, Walpole, Medfield, and the opportunity for me to do well in Medfield, 50% I wanted to be the food. However, the food that we serve, it is fine cuisine. I have it. They wanna so they go next door and they buy a glass of again, my intention is not to make this a full bar. However, to add not value but to add an additional complement for a meal, I felt that it was adequate for me to move forward. If I wanted to do this from day one, I would have been here when I opened up the restaurant. However, I changed my mind maybe 2 months ago because people have asked me, are you going for your license? Are you going for your license? And my priority is not that. My priority is to ensure that people really like the food. If I feel that the product that I have is well enough for me to stay in Medfield, then I will move forward. But my intention has never been to sell liquor. At this point, I am requesting, with obviously with the authorization of everybody, to please grant me the license. The hours of operations are very short. I operate Monday through Wednesday from 5 to 9, Thursday, Friday, and Saturdays until 10, and Sundays from 4 to 8. There's about 25 seats. Mm-hmm. I don't know if any of you have been to my restaurant, but if you look on Yelp or if you spoke to many people, I have been getting great reviews. People really like what I do, and I feel blessed going home every night that I know that every money that I make it's rewarding, and I enjoy that. So again, thank you for allowing me to be here, and I hope that, my request is granted.
Thank you very much, sir. Any questions for?
No, I ate at your restaurant. I thought the food was great. It was very good. My wife and I just had a great time there. I think it's important for us in Medfield to encourage small restaurants, businesses. It's good for the tax base in the town. It's good for the people in the community. So I think you have a great attitude with that. You want to keep it small. You want to make sure people have a very good dining experience. So I salute you on that. My only question was, we had a letter that came in last week, some concern on the parking, especially on the weekends, Friday, Saturday, that there's an overflow that goes out onto Green Street, and there was some concern. Green Street, as you know, the sidewalk and the street are equal, so there's no divider, and the concern was that people parking on the sidewalk, people trying to get by, there was some safety issues raised on that. That's the one concern I had.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I did speak to the building inspector and the plumbing inspector this afternoon, and I believe you have the letter from the inspector there.
Mhm.
But
Yeah, we just got it.
they both expressed concern that the restrooms in the restaurant do not comply with the state plumbing code, and that there may also need to be a waiver regarding the handicapped access law. So they suggested that you table this hearing and not make a decision on it, and refer this application to the building inspector and the plumbing inspector for further review and recommendation.
Sir, have you seen the letter from the building inspector?
No, sir. I have been here 3 or 4 times, and I always ask questions. Is there anything that I need to know before I move forward? As we know, everything, it costs money to do this. This is the first time that I heard. Number 2, in order for me to even move forward with the business, there are many things. This is not just that I'm going to turn on the switch and I'm going to start serving liquor. There's a process to do this for me as well. As far as I'd like to answer your question regarding the parking, I was here about in December, and I kind of felt very awkward and insulted in a way, because I have friends from Peru that are very professionals. And it came to my mind when someone put it on the newspaper on the Medfield patches, this illegal restaurant open. To me, it was sort of like an insult. Then I said, gee, did I do anything wrong? As far as my conscience and as far as what I did, I thought I was on target. But there are some friends, because the legal is in quote, could be many things. So I kind of felt real bad about that. I didn't move forward, and I said, gee, you know what, is that how they treat me? I'm a new person. I'm investing about almost $200,000 in the community. I want to do something that people enjoy. It's not about making money, but I also want to receive some sort of support from the town. As far as the parking situation, we talked about this in December, and I believe I was granted for the number of seats. So therefore, I'm not adding any more seats. I'm just adding a wine, some Peruvian liquor, which really, I don't think that's gonna draw. I don't want Antara to be known for a liquor license. I want it to be known for the food that we carry. So people will still come in, whether or not I have the license or not. But I think that is in the best interest of the restaurant to have that. As far as the plumbing situation, I applied for this back in January. It's been now 2 months. I wish that would have got a letter and say, by the way, there's some codes that you need to apply. Why don't we send the plumber and everything else? So, again, I'm caught here by surprise today. And I just want to make sure that I want to do things by the book.
Sure. Well, first of all, the material that appears in the patch, that's not the town. That's just people posting things, and so that has nothing to do with the town. Secondly, where the building inspector is asking us to hold on your license until this issue gets worked out, I think it makes it hard for us to do anything other than just hold it until we hear back from the building inspector on it. Mr. Sorrell?
Yeah, I have to come to the building inspector's defense here. It was represented originally by this gentleman that he was taking over a pizza business, and that's what he was going to continue, and then it turned out his plans were more elaborate. The building inspector became aware of it after the fact, has tried to work with him and work cooperatively to get the needed things done, understanding on the one hand the economic development, but on the other hand, that there's public health and safety issues that have to be addressed. And this gentleman has chosen to move forward on what he views as priorities versus what the law requires. Now, as far as the alcohol license, the two prongs, neither of which have actually been addressed, are public need. With a restaurant, that's not that difficult. The other is the fitness of the applicant in terms of his ability and experience. So the town's tried to work with him. I've had some discussions myself, but the fact of the matter is there's a code compliance issue that needs to be addressed before he becomes any more invested in this establishment.
Mark or
No,
Richard?
I agree with town council. I think we should look to postpone, hold the hearing, I think, till it matters resolved.
Is this something you can work on as far as, it seems that the code is saying you need additional restroom facility?
Again, I was here last week, and if I ask questions, if I come here 2 or 3 times and I say, gee, is there anything that I need to know today before I come to the meeting? I would have been more prepared. I probably would have been with a plumber, or I probably would have said, you know what, this thing can be done. This thing is gonna cost me $50,000. But to come here today again for the second time, and I don't mind doing anything that we need to do. But I should have been told. And I think that's only very respectful from all of us, that if I'm coming here in front of everybody today, not that I'm demanding that I want to have the license. I feel that this is the second time that it's always a pro. And as a business guy, I'm going like, gee, the economy is bad as it is. I want to provide good service. What do I need to do? Do I need to invest more money? And this all comes.
Well, I think that, sir, there's a series of things that just need to get worked out, and it sounds like somehow there was some miscommunication about that, is what you're saying, and perhaps that's what happened. But I think that what you need to do is you need to go back and talk to the building inspector about the things that need to get accomplished before he would recommend to us that we approve this, because it's very hard for us to approve it when our building commissioner is telling us to hold off on it.
Right.
So I think we're in agreement that we're going to hold off on it until you work things out with the building commissioner. But thank you very much for coming in, and good luck in getting that worked out with him very quickly.
Sure. Who do I get that do I come and talk to the building inspector?
You want to talk to the building commissioner, Mr. John Naff.
Okay.
Take a copy of this letter.
Continue this to a date and time certain because it would have been advertised,
Mm-hmm.
so he doesn't have to go through, this is
Publication
basically a
again.
continuance of this hearing, so I continue it for a reasonable time to allow him, say, at least 30 days.
Okay. So, do you want to do we need to make a motion for that, Richard?
Yeah, it has to be continued to a date and
Yeah.
time.
So what's a Tuesday
I
that
don't
we're
have a
going to?
calendar. What's
Oh,
the
wait a minute,
first,
wait a
what's the
minute.
first meeting in June?
This week of
In
May.
June is the 3rd, June 3rd, Tuesday, June 3rd.
Can you be
June
here
3rd?
then, sir?
That's good.
We'll
Fair.
extend it till then,
June
yeah.
3rd at 7?
Yeah.
I make a motion that we continue the hearing until June 3rd.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All in
At
favor?
7 o'clock.
At
At
7
7.
o'clock.
7 o'clock.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Yep.
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Very good. We'll see you.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next, we have a public hearing, earth removal application, Medfield Investment LLC, Robert Borelli. Proposed removal of 6,800 cubic feet of sand, gravel from property at 61 Dale Street.
It's Mr. Morelli. Excellent. Evening. Evening.
Good evening.
My name is Rob Truax of GLM Engineering Consultants. I represent Mr. Borelli this evening with the engineers on the project.
Okay.
What we're proposing is a 4-lot subdivision off of Dale Street. It's about a 450-foot road. And in order to put the roadway in and the utilities, there's a cut going in up the hill, and we have to remove about 6,800 yards of material. We requested a waiver from the planning board in order to keep this reduced to that amount, and I think they're in support of that waiver, which is really just to allow the profile to be less of a cut going into the site, so we remove less material, and that is a waiver we requested. So this is probably the least amount that we can do with the waiver, and if we don't get the waiver, it would increase it. I have a set of plans. If anyone wants to see the plans and take a look at it, bring them up.
We have a copy here.
We've seen them.
Here.
Copy here.
Okay, so, Mr. Musto Construction Inc. would be the contractor on the site doing the removal, taking it off-site, so that's pretty much it.
Any questions?
Is the gravel being taken out of the town of Medfield?
My understanding was it was gonna go to Tresca Brothers and Millis,
Okay.
so yes, it would go out of town.
I think when you grant the permit, you should make it subject to the usual conditions, that no loam be removed from the site, that the trucks not operate before 7 a.m. or after 5 p.m., and that they be covered. And if there's a problem with traffic, how many truckloads do you expect that will involve?
We figured about 309 trucks.
And over what time period would that be? How many days?
I don't have a number on the number of days.
Well, if you want to make it subject to the usual conditions as far as
Subject to the
traffic
police
and
chief's review, too, the
review,
traffic
yes.
Yeah. Excellent.
I don't assume it'll be too much of a problem just going to Tresca's, because they'll just go down Dale Street.
Dale Street and then go onto 109, yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
So do we have a motion to approve the permit, subject to the usual conditions and subject to the police chief's review?
I make a motion that we grant the permit, again, subject to the reviews, including no loam, the truck hours, the trucks being covered, and also subject to the police chief's review.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yep. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Thanks.
And our next appointment is at 7:30, so we might as well get on with some of our other business here. Schedule a meeting with town council to discuss his bylaw review memorandum, which was given to us again tonight. Mark, how far out did you want to do that?
I don't care, whatever works for you folks.
Maybe right after town meeting.
Right after town
Yeah, I
meeting
think
would
we
be
talked
good.
about that right during, to get started on that in May then. Yeah, okay.
Do we have a preference for, do you want to do a Saturday morning, do you want to do an evening?
Well, you want to set that up right now, or do you want me to come back to a selectmen's meeting to discuss it? We just set up a workshop, is that what you're proposing to do? That's fine.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think that's what you had
All right.
suggested, so I think
Maybe,
that-
yeah, maybe you can kind of poll us around, try to figure out what works for everyone. I'm not quite sure what my schedule looks like in May yet, but we can maybe look at, and you can maybe have some ideas what your schedule looks like, yeah.
Should we invite the Charter and Bylaw Study Committee to this, or?
And
is
it's more important the planning board and boards like that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. Maybe you can take a look at couple of dates as options or something like that, and we can figure out. I know I'm busy the first couple of weekends in May anyways with college graduations and stuff.
Or a
Yeah.
Thursday can work, where
Okay.
town hall's late, open late.
Oh, yeah,
something like that.
that's true.
That's an option,
Okay.
Yeah.
At least get started, maybe? Yeah.
yeah.
All right, so maybe a Thursday night sometime, I don't.
and this is on the bylaws and regulations and anticipation, new development, including the former state hospital site.
Yeah. That could be good, yeah.
Thank you, Mark, for
Okay.
pushing that along. Next item is well, on the agenda it says discuss Council on Aging facility rental policy. That's not really the issue. The issue is that Council on Aging chose to not follow the town council's advice on something. And so my question was, what should the Board of Selectmen be doing if a town board doesn't follow the advice of our town council? Mark, maybe you could brief people a little bit on this.
Just by way of overview, you appoint the members of the Council on Aging. However, even though they're appointed, they have, by town meeting action, care, custody, and control of the facility. So it's their call how it's used, what the policies are. So you've got that tension, if you will, between the fact that they're a board that you appoint, but yet they have independent authority once appointed. Much like Concom, who you also appoint, but nevertheless there's certain property that's been put under their care, custody, and control. So the issue here has to do with the use of the facility. It is, let's just, if it were a senior center strictly, then it can be operated as a senior center. Uses are secondary to that. Other uses are much the same as any other building, town facility that has a primary use, and to the extent that there are other uses that are not inconsistent, they're okay. Say the FAF Center, for instance, if it's available and there's not regularly scheduled park and rec things there, fine. However, when the center was set up, it was viewed as a potential revenue source to underwrite its operating expenses, as I recall, and therefore it was going to be held out for various functions. The issue becomes, the more you hold a facility out for an independent use like that, the more you're subject to legal requirements as to how that operates, independent of the senior center. And that's kind of where we are right now. And this is a policy decision, there's no right or wrong, but it has to be resolved. If it's going to be held out as a function facility, then the policies and procedures need to be revised from what they are now. If it's going to be strictly a senior center, or primarily a senior center with occasional other uses, then there's way more latitude. So that's kind of an overview, and even though you are my appointing authority and I answer directly to you, there's a whole lot of non-legal issues here that I'm trying to stay clear of. So I'm not sure that was an answer to your question, Mr. Peterson.
It covers a lot of it. I'll try to maybe fill in a little bit too as well, because this is an issue that arose because of someone who tried to rent the facility for a Sweet 16 party for their daughter and discovered that there was a disinclination to rent to them. And as I understand, the discussions that happened between the town council and the Council on Aging was that the town council advised the Council on Aging to take a particular course of action, which was namely to rent to the person, and that the Council on Aging refused to take that course of action despite the fact that it could put the town at risk. Is that more or less the...
They'd already made their decision when I became involved in this. They had discussed the application apparently at a meeting and made a determination not to rent. And then because of the repercussions from that, I became involved. So I was not involved in advance of this. So it would be a case of changing their position from what they originally did.
So that the, yes, in just a second. So the question that I posed as a result of this history, and I got personally involved because I happened to have selectman hours at the center last, the first Friday of the month, and ended up spending most of my time talking with Roberta and Lou Fellini about the issue. And I too, as town council, suggested to them that given the issue that existed, that it struck me that the most logical thing to do was just to rent to the person that was, and I guess the issue that I guess I'm bringing up for the selectmen is what should we do when a town board or a town group decides to not follow the advice of our town council? Should we be doing anything? Should we just let them go off on their own, even if it creates financial risk for the town? How do we deal with this?
I have a question. It's pertinent to the other question.
Okay, but in just a second, please.
Let me-
Everybody will have a chance to speak eventually.
In my own opinion, I'm kind of saddened we've come to this point. I actually put a couple of emails out and also was involved in the discussion here. And I tried to point out that there's a lot of positive things with the young people in Medfield, and the idea of the Sweet 16 party. I thought if they had that, it would take place without incident. Everything would go fine. I suggested that perhaps they have a police officer. I even suggested that I would volunteer to chaperone myself on that, with the hopes that we would not have a division taking place between seniors and non-seniors. But I also very strongly tried to point out the positive things of Roberta and the Council of Aging and what they have done for our seniors in the new building. That new building did not just appear, but it came after lots of hard work by many people, especially Lou Fellini. If it were not for Lou Fellini, that building would not be here today. Several times, you remember, he came to town meeting and was met with defeat before he was finally able to get that passed. He put in hundreds and hundreds of hours to make that building a reality. Roberta has worked so hard in developing a model center for our seniors. She really is so caring and helpful to our senior citizens. They really mean much to her and her to them. And in the end, I mentioned in my first email that I gave it my best shot to try to make that Sweet 16 party a reality. But I said very clearly in the end, I would go by whatever the vote of the Council of Aging was. They are the ones who oversee the buildings, and as an appointed board, have that jurisdiction. And I know myself as a selectman, there are many issues that people do not agree with me on, but all boards, especially like the Council of Aging, are volunteers who give of their time to help run the town. Perhaps they make what some people feel are unpopular votes. They cannot please everybody. And I may not agree with the Council of Aging on this decision, but I will defend their right to make such a vote, and therefore I will strongly go along with their decision. Again, I tried to find a compromise that would work for both parties, but that just did not happen. The Council of Aging has made the decision. Just as many is not happy, perhaps with that. That's the decision they made. I again, have personally seen all that Roberta and the Council of Aging have done over the years. They're very good people who have given much to the town and given above and beyond to have a home for our seniors, and they tried the best to do what they think is best for the center. So I was hoping that that would take place. It did not, but they're a duly appointed board, and I think it's our responsibility to back up that board, and that's kind of how I view it.
Okay, regardless of their going against town council.
I think they're a duly appointed board. They make a decision just as we make decisions that not everybody agrees with, but they have their reasons. They listened, they came to a decision, and they voted on it in open session, and I'm going to have to support whatever their vote was. That's how I view it.
All right, Mark?
I think it's really pretty simple for me. you know, I wouldn't dream of having the Board of Selectmen interfere with the decision of the Council on Aging. It's been very clear with them, as well as other boards. They're in charge of that facility. We've invested that with them, and we know that they take a lot of care and thought as far as what they want to do as far as their decisions. I stand by whatever the decision is, and I wouldn't think that we would want to interfere with that. And I think, too, sometimes in today's society, everyone's always threatening to sue in a lawsuit. I mean, we just kind of spend our whole life worrying about getting sued and who's going to do what. And it seems like we're always running scared of lawsuits, so we quickly look to settle and compromise perhaps on what's the right thing to do, or what we feel, you know, is in the best interest of our particular committee or whatever. I know I'm not talking too clear, but like I said, I just wouldn't dream of overriding what the decision is for the Council on Aging. It's just not a position there. You guys are in charge of the building, and that's the way it should be, you know, my point of view.
Okay, we had some people in the audience that wanted to speak. Maybe we can start in the
Leslie's
front
gonna
and
give
just
it
work around.
Leslie's got a microphone.
Yeah.
Hey, Paul Hinckley, Harding Street. For one, I've been in town for a long time. The school has facilities, and they turn down people. Their board votes against it. A lot of the other ones do. We used to have a park and rec for the kids in town at the Fab Center. They had to stop those gatherings on Friday nights because they had 3 or 4 police coming in to break up the hassle, the drinking that was going on. And anybody that doesn't think 16-year-olds are drinking are naive. I see them smoking going by the place. I think maybe if you want to change it, you should make it an adult center, or maybe just make it a senior center. I, for one, wasn't for the senior center when it was being voted for the money, but I've changed my mind. I never thought that they would get 1,200 seniors going in there and making the big change in town, taking care of the senior citizens as it is. And personally, I don't think it's any place for a bunch of 16-year-old kids, especially about 60 of them. If you went to the school, I think they'd turn you down. If you went, you could go to the Legion, you could go to the Kingsbury Club that rents. They're not making a lot of money down there. You're talking $80 an hour or something. I mean, you could rent a tent for that and hold it in your backyard. And if you're going to overturn every board in town that has a decision, then you might as well just do away with all the boards. That's all I have.
Thank you very much. My name is Mr. Sylvia. I attend the senior center. I am in full support of the way the senior center is being run at the moment. But I do have a question. And the question I would be with the town council. And the question is this: if we have a protocol at the senior center in the manner in which it should be run, and it's in writing, and it's followed by the people who run the senior center, then what would the town council propose such that we would not have any individual coming in and threatening to form a lawsuit because they're rejected by the Council on Aging, based on, the Council on Aging is basing their decision on written protocol that currently exists.
Mark?
It's not enough to have a written protocol. The written protocol has to be compliant with whatever statutes, regulations are applicable. And as I indicated, if it's strictly a senior center, you have much greater latitude with how the place is operated and who's permitted to come in and who not. If it's going to be opened up as something beyond a senior center, then you have more legal requirements that are applicable to the protocols that you have. I've already talked to the COA chair. He knows what I'm talking about. I prefer not to go into any more detail at this point in time. Could I ask you to consult with the senior center administration and propose whatever legalities are required to run it the way it is today. As I said, there's a policy decision that needs to be made, whether it's strictly going to, whether it's primarily going to be a senior center or it's going to be a senior center plus something else.
Who makes
That's a COA decision.
Who,
Excuse me, I don't want Mark to be. Mark has been very helpful to the senior center. The discussion we're having here, and I think Mark doesn't realize that there is a form that we have, a rental form, that includes under 21. And this is not the reason why I supported the vote that was taken to stop, not have the Sweet 16 dance. The fact was, there is also in the council, what are they? The directions and policies for rental of the senior center.
I want to interrupt you, Mr. Fellini. With all due respect, Mr. Chairman, I don't know what the status of this is right now. It's a potential claim against the town, so as far as what the COA has done or hasn't done up till now, I would strongly advise we not discuss that any further tonight.
I'll take your advice.
Are there any other comments or questions in terms of general?
I just have one comment. There seems to be an intimation that we do not provide or allow any rentals to the children in town. May I just point out, we have had MAP talent shows. We've had the Medfield High School Jazz Band at the center, and in fact, supported their fundraiser for their China trip. We've had Girl Scout Gold Award ceremonies, Boy Scout Eagle ceremonies, a yearly violin recital for grades K through 12. This is just a partial list of the things that we provide for the youth in our community. I'm the volunteer coordinator. We provide plenty of community service hours to the teenagers in town. I work very closely with Medfield High School, with the churches in the area, and other community services. It is not, we are not biased against the kids in town. We had reached our 3 rentals per month. And I guess that's all I'll say on that subject.
There's someone right behind you that wants to comment.
Do you have something?
it seems there are 2 issues here that are getting commingled. And the first one I'd like to ask, and maybe Attorney Sorrell would answer, did the Council of Aging violate any law or put the town in any jeopardy by their vote?
That's a question that I don't think Mr. Sorrell wants to answer.
Okay, then I'll pass it. But from what I heard people say here, it appears that they acted within their authority by making that vote. And therefore, the following questions are sort of moot. They acted in their authority. You may disagree with that authority. You may disagree with the decision. But if they acted within their authority, so be it. Incidentally, I'd like to point out, just to keep it separate, Roberta Lynch is not a member of the COA, took no part in the voting process, and is totally separate.
She's not a board member.
She is not.
Right. Thank you. Is there anybody else that wanted to comment? So I guess we're done with that issue then. I would hope that, I would just hope that, that town boards would try to follow the advice of town council, especially when there's a question of putting the town at risk. But thank you all very much for coming. Our next item is Economic Development Committee. Members of the committee in attendance to discuss the warrant article pertaining to Lot 3 on Ice House Road. Who's going to lead on that?
Oh, Ralph is. Yeah.
My name is Ralph Costello. I'm member of the Medfield Economic Development Committee.
Ralph, could you just hold on it just a second, please?
Well, maybe, yeah.
If people want to, excuse me, if people want to talk, could they please go outside, because we're continuing the meeting? Thank you very much. Ralph, if you wouldn't mind waiting just a couple minutes for the people to... Want to try again, Ralph?
Sure.
Thank you.
Ralph Costello. I'm a member of the Medfield Economic Development Committee and asked to be the spokesman this evening. This is in regards to the discussion over Ice House Road. Currently, what happens on Ice House Road is the Kingsbury Club, and there's also, the senior center. There's one vacant lot, and the question becomes what to do with the vacant lot. And that's been a discussion that's been going on for a number of years. So we have, as a committee, we've discussed it at length, over 2 or 3 or 4 meetings, and we discussed various uses of what could happen there, what might be best for the town. And we also heard from, in the process, Mr. Borelli, who has a proposal which I think everybody is aware of. He has a proposal for an indoor recreational facility that would be all year, a year-round facility. Without saying, yes, that's the right project or whatever for the area, we were attracted to that project for basically three reasons. First, it was the recreational use. With the Kingsbury Club currently there and doing tennis and health club, it seemed like a natural use, to add additional recreation in the same area. It's an easy transition to go from a recreation use to recreation use. And they would be, they're synergistic in a way because, what's being offered, at least in the Borelli proposal, was a soccer fields and basketball courts, and where there's already tennis and a health club there at the Kingsbury Club. Now, the other reason is that, Medfield is a town that is really into sports, as everybody knows. And there's a growing need for, soccer and basketball facilities. And I think that, this was also on our mind as one of the main reasons why this might be a good use for the project. The other is in the, not to be lost is that this parcel is not collecting any revenue currently, and so the town gets to have a lease, a ground lease that will bring in revenue annually. So for those reasons, we thought that this would be, we certainly as a committee we recommend that the selectmen really consider going down the pathway of having an article which would allow a private development to take place there in a ground lease.
Questions?
No, I think it makes perfect sense, yeah, obviously, because that's the big article here that we've got to decide on town meeting and stuff, whether to grant, obviously, the selectmen the ability to be able to negotiate with the right deal, so it's great to get some good feedback from you folks on that, yeah.
In my own opinion, there's so many things on our plate. The revenue question, I think, it has to be addressed. I think, as a community, we have to try to find as many ways we possibly can to reduce the burden of the tax burden on the property owner. There's so little industrial zone land that's here in Medfield. The bulk of the burden, 96 whatever percent, falls on the homeowner. And so with that, I think we have an individual willing to develop that. I think the selectmen need to look of how we can best make that revenue producing, and it sounds as though you guys have done some research on this. This is not the first time it's come up, so we've been able to look at that, and I think that makes a lot of sense.
I had just a couple comments. I don't want to talk specifically about the sports proposal or Lot 3 in specifically, because I live next door to it, so I'm ethically prohibited. But in general, in terms of when we're considering uses of town property, I would hope that it would fall into a bigger planning process so that it's not just an ad hoc decision on each parcel, what we're going to do with this one this year, what are we going to do with this one the next year. I would hope that we would have an overall plan of what the town wants to accomplish, and then slot different things in as to how we want those things to meet that eventual town goal.
Yeah.
So that's one thought. The other thought has to do with, your development clearly has shown thus that housing can be an income maker for the town. I've come to believe over the course of my being a selectman for 14 years that it's hard to find businesses and industries to locate here. And maybe there is, maybe the sports facility is one that would. But in general, I've come to think of our business being the business of providing housing. And I think that we can do that if we provide housing like yours at Old Village Square that is income positive to the town.
Right.
If you design it in the right way, you can make money off of housing as a town.
Well, one of the uses that was proposed at one of the meetings was affordable housing, and, it was, there was some consideration, discussion about it, but I think the general consensus was that the use, the recreational use was probably the better use to consider, but certainly there's a need for affordable housing in town, and done well. And
I would encourage you to talk to Roberta Lynch, because she has mentioned that area as well.
Yeah.
I think that you serve to touch base with her.
Yeah, we already did, yeah.
Good.
Thought we did look at was,
Could you just use the microphone, otherwise people at home can't hear you?
Behind
Over your other shoulder.
The biggest problem is it's zoned industrial business right now. To change it back to residential, you're putting somebody beside the Kingsbury Club, and then you got the senior center. You still have the 10 acres right behind the senior center that's zoned residential if you want to put some nice affordable housing in there. But we've tried, I've been on the industrial board, now it's the economical development board for the last 15, 18 years. We've tried many years trying to get somebody in there to put something, and you got railroad tracks on both sides. And nobody would come in because we're in the middle of Medfield, for one thing. But when Kingsbury Club came in, it was a good project. First, it was the YMCA. They wanted to do it, held us up for 2 years. They flopped, went out. They wanted us to pay for it. Then they were talking about Park and Rec coming and doing it. The only thing, if Park and Rec built a place, which they don't want it right now there, it would cost the taxpayers. We'd be paying to make more recreation for our kids. Now, this recreation is going to bring revenue in to the town, and we're only going to lease, so it comes back, same as the Kingsbury Club. If it failed, it would come back to the town, and we could release. So I feel whether it's the particular project for the sports, or we'll probably put out an RFP or something.
That's the plan, would be the
Which
plan,
will
yeah.
give everybody an opportunity to bid for that particular lot. I believe it's one of the only lots left that's zoned industry in town.
Yeah.
As far as the affordable housing issue, that was discussed at length with the committee over a couple of meetings, and there was 2 points worth mentioning. Of course, with the Medfield State Hospital, property now going to be developed, certainly affordable housing is going to be a good possibility there. The other thing the other point worth making about affordable housing on the location of Ice House Road, even though there was some mention that this would be a good location because it's right next to the senior center. We found, certainly in our marketing, that seniors don't necessarily, want to be next to the senior center. It's not what they're interested. They're more interested in maybe walking to, park or walking to the town or whatever. So it's not so much the proximity to the senior center. So this discussion, and these were some of the issues that were discussed regarding affordable housing or a use of housing in that location. That's why the natural seemed to be, if there's an opportunity at, a facility, an indoor sports facility, it seemed like a very good option because the engineering is already, possible, whereas the other alternate use might not have any engineering that would work. And, in addition to that, the other issue that's related to this is, part and parcel to the Borelli proposal, and we're not recommending that proposal in particular, but there is a need to have a portion of the lease that is currently in the lease to the Kingsbury Club revisited, because there would be a sublease that would go from Kingsbury over into another project or a project like this, if it not Borelli's project, some other project.
Right.
That would, there would be a need to make it all work, parking-wise and drainage-wise, So having that engineering done, I think, is a good milestone and an accomplishment because, it becomes more real as an option.
Good.
Any further questions? Yes, Ms. Thompson.
Yeah, Ann Thompson. Like Paul, I'm a longtime member of the committee. We're a mixed bag of people. We never agree on anything. We are unanimous on this. We feel very, very strongly that the town owes it to the taxpayers to start bringing in some more revenue in this town. And I'm supported the purchase of the state hospital, but we have to pay for it. So we need to pay for all these things. Most housing, as Ralph knows, does not generate significant revenue from the town. High-priced housing like his old Medfield Square, that certainly did. It was a great project. I support it. But most housing brings kids, et cetera, more school costs, et cetera. This, to me, is a golden opportunity, and I don't think it's one we should let go.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you very much, then.
Thank you.
Next, we have Attorney Ted Cannon, discuss proposed plans for the Wills Building at 5 Janes Avenue. Hi, Ted. Ted, if you're going to sit there, are you going to go up there? Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Nice to be here with you this evening.
Thank you for coming.
I have 4 sets of 4 plans that I'd just like the board to have. And I'm here on behalf of Open Spaces Builders LLC. That is Dave and his son Rob McCready. We're here this is the start of a project at 445 Main Street, which is right next door across Janes Avenue. Growing up as the Wills Building, where Wills Hardware was for many years. And the reason that we wanted to start here with the board is Dave and Rob have been in some discussions with various town officials and just trying to get a sense of, really just to throw out some ideas of what kinds of uses may fit in best there. It's sort of been a variety of uses over the years, retail on the first floor, some residential up above, and before you, we have sets of just renderings of the first floor, a second floor, and a third floor, with retail on the first floor, some office space on the second floor, and some residential units on the third floor. One of the keys to the project that the McCready's would like to do is, particularly for the residential units, is we understand that parking in this area is at a premium. Part of it is to create some parking underneath the building for the residential unit owners, so that we can actually add to the parking in the area, which is very difficult in this area to do. And then to try to find some uses that would dovetail nicely with sort of the uses that go on during the time now. You know, we understand there's been a lot of pressure on the Janes Ave lot, so you know, what kind of uses may make more use during the day, or in the evening when it's not quite as crowded, and then trying to create some parking when we can. So really just wanted to introduce the project to you and see if the board had any sort of thoughts. We understand that nothing is binding and that we don't, that the board has no oversight on the project. We have to go to other boards for approvals, but we would be interested to get any feedback from the board in terms of preferences for the types of uses that might be appropriate there.
Ted, I think it's great, and mixed use is terrific, I think it's great, and it's nice to see that, at least conceptually, you're thinking about some, you know, having some apartments there and continue with them, because certainly is a shortage of apartments in Medfield and stuff, so the more we can have, I think, the better. And also, the more people that we can have living downtown, like anything else, like any downtown area, is always, I think, a great thing, you know, so that's great. So you're talking about maybe trying to do some parking underneath? Is that what you folks are trying to do, really? Yeah.
It would be limited, so
yeah.
the idea would be to reserve that for the residents.
Sure, oh, yeah, yeah.
There is
Wow.
some space in back that's a possibility to be done.
Oh, that's pretty good. That's great. That's perfect. Oh.
No, my only comment was that the more you can add to the vitality of the downtown, especially in that lower level, and I would guess if you could get one owner or one retailer to come in and take the whole lower level, you'd go with that one. You have it divided up into 4 areas, but it would probably be what the market, if you could get 1 or you could get 2. So I think that keeps it in the idea of keeping life in the downtown, and I think as Mark correctly said, it's kind of interesting, a great view in that top, and those 3 apartments that would be up there. And that's kind of creative with the idea of trying to have their parking underneath like that. I imagine you have to do quite a bit of excavating and work to get that done. Plus, as you well know, there's all kinds of updating and a lot of effort you're going to have to put into that building. But it really is just the key building, I think, in the town of Medfield. You know, since the 1890s, it's been there. It's just a great-looking building, and it would be great to see a lot of life back into that.
I commend you guys for taking it on. I think it'll be a wonderful addition to the town to have it redone and fixed up. And I do think the parking's a problem in the downtown. I don't know how you get around that. I think anecdotally, I think the municipal lots are full a lot of the times. So I don't know what we're going to do about that. The library doesn't have much parking. I know that it's often filled over here in front of Larkin's and North Street Market. So it looks like you have a lot of spaces attached to each of the retail locations. I mean, is that what this is meant to indicate, that the
The parking,
The parking spaces, it says 10 spaces, for instance, the retail 4.
Oh, correct. The technical requirements.
Technical
correct.
requirements, yeah.
You know, I guess the ZBA has the authority to waive that if they choose to, but
Yeah.
I guess that's what the zoning would say, so that, I mean, for the first floor, then that's 14, 20, 30 spaces that you'd need, and you don't have 30 spaces, obviously.
Would take up most of the downtown there, yeah, you fill up the whole parking lot there, yeah, but, yeah,
It's 51 spaces total. when you
Yeah.
add it up.
yeah.
It's certainly a challenge. The benefit to the town is, the intent is
Oh, yeah.
to, again, preserve a very historic building
Building,
for
oh,
the
sure.
downtown,
Oh, yeah.
which is great. And any use that's a vital use of
Yeah.
that building will put pressure on the parking. And
course
so
it will,
those are
yeah.
certainly challenges that
Yeah.
we face as we forge ahead in terms of
Yeah.
finding the right relief from a zoning standpoint, being able to preserve the exterior
Yeah.
and that history, and
Yeah.
then to come up with a method that the parking fits for the
Sure,
use. So
yeah,
those are
no.
all challenges we have before us. But
I guess it's a nice problem and challenge for us to have, that the downtown gets so active that we have to figure out the parking, so
No, that's very
maybe we
good.
can, if we have to, maybe we'll figure that out, so. Good luck with it.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ted.
Thanks very much.
Gentlemen, thanks.
Next, we have Jean Minio of the Medfield Cultural Council discussing the warrant article pertaining to the Straw Hat Park on North
Not
Street.
here yet.
Okay.
She's not
Jean,
here.
yeah, okay.
So then we'll, let's see, Sarah Raposa, Town Planner, to discuss letter to Department of Housing and Community Development regarding statement of need for local preference in Medfield and request selectmen vote to execute.
So,
Hi.
Sarah Raposa, Town Planner. I'm bringing tonight to you a request for your support on the local preference statement. That would be in relation to the Park 40B on West Street. They are moving through their approval processes with DHCD. They've achieved their funding. Their plans are in review with the building department. This is the last piece of the puzzle for their application with DHCD. It's part of their affirmative fair housing marketing plan. And what it does is it says to DHCD that the local community, Medfield, would like a 70% local preference for selection for units at the development. The letter is made up of data local to Medfield. Speaks to the limited housing options and styles and rentals in Medfield, and that's for families, it's for young professionals, it's for town employees and other employees of local businesses, as well as seniors. So you'll see plenty of information in the letter about that. The local preference is capped at 70%.
Okay.
Okay, so that's what that means.
Who gives the approval? I think that's great that you're going to get 70%. Who decides on that?
Well, there is a selection process to fill the units. So the Affordable Fair Housing Marketing Plan sets out how the units will be filled. And actually, the rest of the Affordable Fair Marketing Plan is something I don't have a copy of, but it's something that they, meaning the park, submit to DHCD.
I'm sorry, I missed that. Who actually makes that decision?
It's outlined in their marketing plan, whether they have
DHCD makes the decision.
well,
I'm sorry?
The approval of the plan is subject to the state agency, DHCD.
Yeah, I think,
Department of Housing and Community
I
Development.
think Selectman DeSawyer is talking about who actually picks the applicants for the housing.
Yeah.
Usually, and we've done it past in Turtle Brook and at Allendale, it's been a local group. They hire a consultant to do the first round. And it was my understanding, we went through the process, that they would continue to either have an in-house selection process, and they're audited on that selection process to ensure that we have the 70%.
So the Department of Housing and Community Development, the first step says whether or not we can get the 70%. Is that the first step? And then the second step, it comes down to a local
Right.
board, and then they actually interview and make decisions on that.
Right, and usually it's the owner of the project will hire a consulting firm to run that for them.
It's a lottery initially.
Right.
Marketed, and then depending how much response you get, it's a lottery.
Well, although this one may be a little different, the other two that you're talking about were both home ownership.
Right,
This is a rental, so I believe most of these, like Wilkins Glen has its own rental office, I think. So-
Correct.
So
Yes.
they may,
yeah, that's what, when I said they may do it in-house.
in-house,
Yeah, usually they hire the consultant to get the project started and then do an in-house.
Yeah, because they got a big, obviously they got, what, 92?
Yeah.
The units they got to fill right in one fell swoop.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And then from then
Is
on.
the developer agreeable to the 70% local
Yes,
preference? They are.
Absolutely.
It was part of the decision, actually, with the ZBA, he agreed to it,
Okay.
to the extent it was permissible.
And is that a
Perfect.
given that Department of Housing and Community Development will accept our local preference?
No.
We don't know, no, that's,
That's what I was afraid of.
What happens, at least on the home ownership aspect, which I have more experience with, is they actually make a determination of how your community demographics compare with what they view as a regional. And if you're off, then they make adjustments so that even though it might be a local preference, if you don't have enough minority in your configuration, then they make adjustments for that.
Okay.
So we're not likely to get it then, based on our demographics.
they,
Well, you
they,
get some.
So,
they also look at other things, for example, on Allendale, they looked at the fact that the town had contributed the land and was acting as the developer, in a sense. We set up our own redevelopment authority, so that was a factor in our favor, which is not the case here, so.
so do we have a motion to request, do we have a motion to sign the letter?
So move, Mr. Chairman.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. And now,
Jean's here.
we'll discuss the Gene Minio, Medfield Cultural Council, discuss warrant article pertaining to Straw Hat Park. Not a problem. Thanks for coming.
Appreciate it. Okay, so I wanted to just give a quick background on our progress with the Straw Hat Park. I did submit a summary. I believe everybody hopefully received it, but we've had 6 meetings since mid-January and have done some extensive review and incorporation of public input that came about around Medfield Day and that Visions and Voices project. And we had over 150 responses from folks about what they'd like to see happen, what their ideas were. And we worked on establishing a mission statement around transforming this park. We're talking about the parcel between Starbucks and Zebras. Transforming that park into a multi-generational interactive destination through sustainable design for both individuals and small groups to interact in a natural setting. And using this park really as a model around sustainability for other potential public spaces in town for future development. We then went into developing a very detailed and realistic budget. We had over 36 line items and looked at each line item 3 different ways with a median price and a 20% variance on each side. We also met with DPW about their existing materials and labor and the kinds of parts of the project that they could take on. And we've already gotten in-kind services pledged from the Garden Continuum and have applied to Norfolk County Engineering for in-kind engineering services there. So, and looked at some of the fundraising initiatives that could be applied to some of the enhancements, if you will, of the park, some benches perhaps, some of the plantings. A lot of people commented on interest in a water feature, but thought that that could be something that we might be able to raise money for as opposed to putting that into the town budget. With all of that, it looks like we expect to be able to raise about half of the overall budget for the project, and it comes down to a budget request at town meeting for $80,000. And for the 5,200 approximately square foot park, that's about $15 or $16 per square foot. In an ideal scenario, we would like to do the plantings in the fall and construct the park, or be done with the construction by the end of this calendar year. The plantings will take a little time, a year to 3 years, depending on the plants themselves to sort of settle out, but the idea is that we would ultimately reduce mulching, reduce mowing, reduce chemicals, reduce water usage, get to that point of sustainability and low maintenance. We did meet with the warrant committee on March 25th, but the result was that it seems like it would be unlikely that we'd get their support this year, given the other budget considerations, the primary concern being the one-time expense of over $800,000 for the design work for the public safety building this year. And there was some indication of the potential for a locals meals tax. We were interested in understanding more about the timing and the status of that. And the warrant committee also recommended that we consider programming a conceptual design and seek the selectmen's endorsement on the project. So to the issue of programming, however, the charge to this committee was around design, not programming. And we don't, this committee is not in charge of programming that space, and we don't, we're looking for clarification about what that process would be. Maybe it's similar to the gazebo park, or would people have to get permits and so forth? We can certainly be a conduit to speaking to other groups about that, but we don't understand what the process would be, so.
When you're talking about programming the space, you're talking about being the people that make the decision as to who gets to use it, or what do you say? I'm not quite clear.
Yeah, I mean, they had suggestions like perhaps the farmer's market would expand across the street. They felt like the space should be activated on an ongoing basis with programming. I think it will become more active given its location and given sort of this private development that's happening in this concentrated area already. We'd like to see the public investment keep up with that, in particular starting with this park.
And let me ask you about the 80,000.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't quite clear. You said you were going to raise half the money, you thought? And so are you raising another 80,000? So it's 160,000 total?
Correct, approximately.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I mean, that includes a commitment from the DPW for their materials and labor. That's included in that other half.
So I see here 57,000 next to the DPW.
Correct.
So is that part of the 80,000 that you're fundraising?
Correct.
Oh, I see. So this.
It's essentially an in-kind. They don't need to add that to their budget to do that work. They can do that with the materials and staff they have on hand.
Oh, okay. So that your sheet from the March 25th comes down to the bottom of 80,000, but
No, I'm sorry, the first
town
three.
investment is the 80,000, and then the 80,000 above it. Okay.
Correct.
Now I'm understanding.
So the contributed goods and services, that's that first half of design and engineering.
Yep.
Department of Public Works, and then additional fundraising to cover some special features. Over and above that, there are things we just have to pay for, including electricians, and some of the construction work. We did work on a conceptual design. Monique is here. If you would like to have us walk you through that, we can do that as well. It's
Oh, sure,
preliminary
yeah.
at this point, but
Yeah, absolutely. That'd be wonderful.
What I can do is,
yeah, you need to be here for the microphone.
All right, I'll hold it up, and then
If you could just put it maybe down on a table so that Wesley could get a camera on it, and then the people at home can see it. Is that possible?
Where should I put it?
Where do you want it to go, Wesley?
Let's start with this one.
That's fine.
This is probably the best first one to look at, and then we'll look at the other one. Okay, so the idea here with this park really stemmed initially from the work that was done to poll the town for what they would like in this particular space. And our group got together and decided that it was going to be a multi-generational space and a space that promoted both sort of that fun aspect of a park, but also a space where one could sit and just be. So what we tried to do was develop both the spaces. So you'll see that the space is divided into two, and that one side is more patio-like, and it has seating and maybe some tables and chairs, and people could take their lunch there, people could hang out there in that space. And then the other space has the potential to have maybe a built-in chess table and a water feature, and it has more of a playful aspect to it. We tried to expand the space so that we would get a little bit more. It's a difficult space in that, as you all know, it's very corridor-like. And we wanted to use the corridor to our benefit. So people are already cutting through, and we thought, okay, well, if they're cutting through, how do we get them to stop? How do we get them to slow down? And really what we're trying to do is build a little bit of a walker culture within the town of Medfield. It's a small town center with lots of really great places to stop. So the idea being that if we could try to engender a bit of a walking culture, we could also engender stop, play, sit, hang out. And that in doing that, what we wanted to do, I mean, generally what people do, and I will put this here because we did try to think of alternatives. And you'll notice that this second design in the right-hand space there, you can see that that space we kept lawn. So we were trying to think, how could we potentially build this in phases? So if we had to build it in phases, could we leave part of it lawn and then turn it into the play space with the water feature and the chess table later? But the idea, again, being long-term, we're looking for sustainability. One of the things with parks is oftentimes they're very high maintenance. We've got lots of mulch and lots of mowing. Also lots of watering. So the idea in this whole park design is that within 3 years' time, we want this space to have grown in such a way that we're not mulching very much at all, that we're not mowing at all, and out of respect for Parks and Rec and the amount of work that they have to do, we want to limit their influx. So the kinds of things that we'll need to do, like in any town, is pick up litter and, sort of keep the place clean, spring and fall cleanup. But otherwise, the space should be highly sustainable and not be consumptive. And so everything in the design really is to promote that.
It's really nice, I like that.
And I'm happy to answer any questions. I know there's a lot there, but
It's, the things that you've suggested are just, it's very magical almost. The fountain, the globe fountain, it almost looked like that you could turn the sphere, the marble or granite sphere on the.
certainly get your hands in there, right?
Yeah, the kids had their hands and the rock climbing walls looked very interesting for the kids. So that, you guys are doing some very exciting things, so thank you for what you've come up with.
I'll say ideally that the thing that I think we all got excited about is that in the past couple of years, the town center has changed a lot, and we seem to have this momentum. And I think we all felt really jazzed that this momentum could just keep going and go right into this space, and to have private development happening is really great. And if we can draw the public into it in a more active way, parks are great for that. Urban development, around parks is great for that. So we're, very excited to pull it together.
What are the big expenses in the 80,000 that the town, is it the pavers or the
Yeah, I would say
concrete,
mostly it's the hardscape. What has actually been really amazing is that the DPW felt capable of building the wall, which we thought was going to make this prohibitive. So they seem to have a skill set as well as the materials to actually build the wall. And the nice thing about the wall is it expands the space, which is great. You'll know that if you walk through the space, it's very pitted and the walkway's kind of a tripper. It's not very ADA friendly. So one of the big expenses is really to create a really good concrete walk. So that's one of the expenses. The other is that we want to be able to have water access, and we want to be able to have electrical access, because we would like to get lighting. We want to make sure that it's safe. So that we do need permitting, we do need licensed electricians and plumbers and so on and so forth to do that. And then again, it is the pavers and it is the earthworks. So the actual earthworks would need to be done outside the DPW's purview. And then the plants, but, I think we all have dreams that we'll have people that donate a tree and donate a bench and some shrubs, and, we may be able to pull. But I would say mostly it's that earthworks, that real foundational and hardscape.
I'm surprised that the DPW wouldn't be able to do the earthworks. I would think that would be the sort of thing that would be right in their wheelhouse.
Oh, I think they could easily, yeah. I mean, they've closed the dump, they built the bleachers down at the high school.
Finish off the 56 acres.
Yeah, and the work they've done at the town garage, a lot of that was.
Yeah.
so
Well, I think
that-
the base earthworks, sort of the initial grading of the site, they would do, but they didn't seem to be all that interested in prepping the beds or doing the concrete or doing any of the
Yeah, I think they do
greenscape.
concrete.
Yeah,
There's things they
Yeah,
hire
great,
people.
yeah.
that they hire people to. So I think the basic bones of the earthworks they could do.
Yeah.
They could certainly rip out the path that's there.
Yeah.
And do some of the prep work. One of the things that I was a real stickler about was that I wanted the prep work to be done at a certain standard. So it's not necessarily the standard that they always work at, and it's not a bad thing. It's really that I wanted to make sure that the walkways and the patio in particular was done to the ICPI regs. So there's some things that they don't normally do, and I'm pushing to make sure we have geotextile grid and kind of pushing the envelope a little bit.
What are you proposing for lighting in there?
That's a really good question. One of the things we thought that would be really neat is to be able to have some low voltage lighting in there, which would mean that we would need a power source where we could have a transformer. And the idea being that then we would be able to uplight the pears and either uplight or downlight from the 3 main trees so that we would be able to wash the space and light and leave it at that. If that isn't possible, then the idea would be to do bollard lighting and to do a metal bollard with a very simple lighting, but to avoid any lighting that would be up high and kind of blinding.
Yeah.
So we would keep it more to
Yeah.
make sure that the walking was safe.
Yeah.
Where's the straw hat gonna be?
Minta? Where's the straw hat gonna be?
I wanted a climbing rock.
She wants a climbing rock that
I want a
is
sculpture made that says straw hat that kids can climb on.
Well, there we go.
either that or it's
Go.
gonna be the water feature, I don't know. We like the globe. The other thing that I will say that we made sure to do is to roll in the first efforts of maintenance into this park, so that, the first year tends to be the most intensive. And so we made sure that within the budget, we had thought about that first year of follow-up care so that the Parks and Rec wasn't overwhelmed.
Yeah, yeah.
I think this is just exciting. I think it would be great for the town. Then the issue becomes, as you mentioned, just the financing. And that's why I'd like to piggyback a little bit on what Gus Murby, the chair of the warrant committee, raised with the issue of the meal tax, that he estimated would bring about $70,000 to $80,000 a year into the town. And his, if I'm reading his argument correctly, is that he could justify if that money went to ways that it was going to improve the business environment in the town, so that it was going towards the downtown, such as the park, or the downtown study committee before had talked about in the downtown area, putting the wires underground, making a difference on that, planting trees, and so that it was going to encourage business in the downtown, it was going to make a more friendly, attractive business environment for the downtown. And so many towns now use the meal tax. Many of the towns surrounding Medfield, it comes out to about 30 cents on a $50 meal that we're talking about. And so many towns, surrounding towns, the Medfield people now are contributing to Sherburne and the other surrounding towns, Millis and others that have the meal tax, and yet Zebras, for example, I think more than 50% of the people that go to Zebras are from out of town. And it would be nice to use that revenue to help the taxpayers of Medfield, so we don't have to appropriate the sum of money, and get some help from people outside the Medfield community that would contribute via that meal tax. And by targeting the downtown area, we could upkeep our parks, not only this park, but Meeting House and the library area, and just would make sense. And I think that's enough to convince the the restaurant, the business owners, that they're getting something back because it's going to be a more attractive center that's going to bring more people in and give them even more business. So I just was very impressed with Gus Murby's train of thought on that. I wanted to piggyback a little bit on that.
Gus sent a very comprehensive, not this year, letter.
We were grateful
Yeah.
for that
Um,
analysis.
But it was, I mean, he was very encouraging, I thought, in terms of the future. I guess I was surprised, too, by the $80,000 price tag for the town's share of it. I hadn't expected it to be that much. I do think that there would probably be a lot of interest in private philanthropy for this purpose. I think that it might be very feasible to raise a lot of that $80,000 if someone was willing to try. But I also like the idea of, I've thought of the meals tax as more a property tax relief measure, but I could also see it very nicely as being tied to improvements of the town. And that's just, that would be the first year you'd get enough to do the Pocket Park, Straw Hat Park, excuse me. But thank you guys so much for everything you're doing on this. This is exciting.
So we're at a point where we're wondering how to proceed at town meeting, because we were appointed by selectmen, so we felt like we needed to provide this update and think about what the next steps are with that.
I think that if the warrant committee says that have they taken a vote on it already?
But we don't have that information.
Okay,
I believe they're taking it tonight.
okay. I think you're gonna have a lot of trouble in the meeting if the warrant committee votes against it. I think that the residents look hugely to the warrant committee for financial guidance on things. A little bit less to us maybe, but,
Well, they were looking to you.
well, I guess that was sort of the way Gus put it, that if this was a policy issue, it was like when the MBTA came out here and talked about whether they would ever run a line out to Medfield. They said financially it'll never work, but if the politicians tell us to do it, we'll do it. And so, I mean, I like this, I know I like it, but I think it's I guess where I come down is, I think it's a very hard year to ask for $80,000, unfortunately.
So I think the question that I would put on the table is, understandably, there's going to be heavy years where there's things that happen, and sometimes these things have to be shelved. I think the thing that I'm most interested in really understanding is whether conceptually a park in this location is something that the selectmen feel like it's a good idea and worth pursuing.
Yep.
And if,
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Definitely. No, I think that's a fabulous plan. I think just the issue is just the money this year in particular. You
Sure.
know, I think you would have a better chance almost than any other year perhaps of being able to get it. But there's just a bad year. No, just a bad
Right.
year. We've got a lot of things, and I know Michael and them worked very hard to try to get us to the point where we're not, obviously, we cannot look at an operational override, and so it was a tough year to do for this.
So the other question I would have is that, assuming that it's off the table this year, that
Yeah.
is it reasonable to come back in a follow, and forgive me, because I
ahead.
just don't know some of these things, but reasonable to come in a following year and sort of ask for the whole kit and caboodle, or is this where we, as a committee, start looking at, can this project be built over the next 3 years in smaller chunks,
Right.
and could a part of it be built this year? I mean, do we entirely lose this year, or do we commission DPW to get the wall in, and do we, prune the trees, sort of with this idea that, next year,
Yeah.
we get a sum, and then the following year we get a sum, and we build this park in pieces. I mean, from a construction standpoint, building something in pieces always ends up costing more money, because you're sort of starting and stopping.
Yeah.
But I'm just curious, from your perspective,
Okay.
how you think, as a
Yeah.
committee, we should be thinking
Well, see,
about
my own
finance.
opinion, I'm hoping that you're going to stay alive, that this meal tax will go through, and then that we can appropriate that towards the downtown area, and you would be a high priority with that. That's just my own view on
But
that.
still, that would be something next
Next
year,
Is there a schedule?
You're right.
at the following
When
year?
would that,
Got
a year from
It has to be
then?
voted on by May 1st in order to take effect for the following fiscal year. So and the town meeting's the 28th, so it is close to the wire. But
Yeah,
Okay.
and the first year, you would get about 10 months' revenue out of it.
yeah.
Don't you pick by lottery to do your articles?
They are picked by,
So if this one gets picked first before the tax.
are you suggesting we stack the lottery?
No, said you really want to put the two articles together.
Yeah, we're meeting, Mark and myself, and I don't know if any of the selectmen want to attend, but, and the town clerk are meeting Friday morning to go over the order of articles. For example, there's like 4 codification articles that need to be taken at the same time, and there's a lot of other articles like that, so that's something we could consider, so.
Yeah.
If that's the will of the board, wish of the board, so.
Yeah, and I think phasing is probably a great idea if you could get, people always like to see that once you get started on things, people see you've made some progress. And if you can get even get the guys to do some work, DPW this summer perhaps, I think that'd be great. People can see you made some progress. It's then certainly easier sell next year.
Right.
For that, because you've already
I think the biggest
jumped
thing
in.
for us is that we start something that ultimately we can't finish.
I know.
So
Yeah,
sort
you don't
of
want-
taking a temperature of
Yeah,
potential for,
yeah.
the other pieces to come through.
Yeah, and I think the sales tax thing is a nice linkage. That might be a very nice way, if that passes, to be able to, meals tax, I mean, to be able to kind of link that. It would be great to maybe, I think, tie those things in where we dedicate those funds that come in each year, perhaps restrict them so that they're always spent on
Sure.
projects like this for the town, and it just
Right.
doesn't get thrown into that.
Well, and then the other
mix.
thing, my thought process goes with that, is you said it's about 70 or 80,000 potentially with the meals tax, and that, that if we can think about a solid phasing schedule for this, probably is a really good sell to say that we're not using all of the meals tax, that we're saying, we want a chunk
Yeah.
of it, we
Yeah.
want a big chunk of it,
Yeah.
but we want to leave enough left over that you can put some effort in
And just some
other
things.
spaces,
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
I think that between us, we probably can
Come up with
think about a way to phase this in.
I like that.
In a good way. Okay.
I think phasing, I also think phasing is a great idea. I mean, when you were talking about this originally, I understood that you wanted it to be at a very high standard. The cement sidewalk that goes through there is much better than a lot of our other sidewalks in town. And I'm thinking to myself, there are other sidewalks I'd replace before that one, but, and so that's one of the things that I might do. I might leave that until later.
You can't. You can't, so
You
what we
can't.
do with phasing is what we, you always want to build from the ground up.
Yeah, okay.
And so all of your base, your structure, just like building a house, has to happen first.
Yep.
But the thing is that, the fear I think we all have is that if we build a wall and we have a lawn and then we have a nice walk, people are gonna think we're done.
Yes.
So we want to make sure that there's some momentum and some buy-in from the selectmen, so that what we're thinking is, okay, we're making a start and we have a grander, bigger picture.
Is there a way, because this is a great diagram here, that perhaps we have to consult with the sign board, but maybe a temporary sign showing this, that here's the plan, so that people would see it as work in progress?
Yeah, I definitely think it's possible. I mean, these are still highly conceptual and still need a lot of work. One of the main things we do not have yet is we don't have an engineered site plan. So I did this pulling off a plot plan. It's more illustrative than anything. But if we felt like we could, push this, in the next year, then I think being able to get the real site plan, the real survey, the engineered survey, and then rebuild this drawing, see if we can tighten everything up, then I think it's a great idea.
I would put right next to the illustrative plan on the site, I would put a thermometer with the fundraising goal.
There you go.
And I think that you're gonna get a lot of donations for it.
Really? Okay.
I think that people would want to be involved in this.
Yeah, I think once you start a project, people see something's being
see
done, then
something.
they get more interested in it than
The whole
if it's
Medfield
just
Day, maybe promoting it like
Yeah,
that.
no, that's a good thought. Yeah, Midfield Day and stuff, yeah.
Right.
And there are a lot of other parks in town that could use some attention. You've been talking about the Meeting House pond area, and there's a lot of that area that's a little tired. The back area of Baxter Park could, I think, use some attention, because it just doesn't get used much, unfortunately. And there's a lot of space back there behind the flagpoles.
Yep.
Excellent. That's great. I really like it. It's very nice. I love the plan.
So do you have enough direction from us at this point, or do you want more, or?
We do. I think the only other outstanding piece was around the process and programming, but we
Yeah.
don't need an answer on that tonight.
Yeah, yeah,
But it's a
Gotta think
question
about
that'll
that,
need to be
yeah.
answered.
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
They have all the direction, now they just want money.
Pictures away.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, my God.
Thank you.
Next, we have the Medfield Energy Committee. Marie, Zach Nolan, Chairman. Discuss warrant articles, overlay district for solar photovoltaic and the stretch code.
Yeah. Look at that, everyone's here.
The Energy Committee en masse.
Yeah, there you go.
Did you want to hand out some of the handouts?
Thank you.
Just, I'm not going to go through this line by line, but just something
Thank you.
that you can
Oh,
look at
excellent.
later.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
You can share if you pass them out to the audience, yeah.
Okay, as you know, I'm Marie Nolan from the Medfield Energy Committee. I have here with me tonight several other members, Cynthia Green, Fred Bunger, and Fred Davis, and they're here to provide support and answer questions, as well as myself. And I want to thank you, the Board of Selectmen, for your support of our committee over the years. And we're here this evening to explain to you in person about the 2 articles on the town warrant that are being sponsored by us and your board. So thank you very much for doing that. Warrant Article 34 and 35. And we also want to be available tonight for any questions that you may have about these articles and what the impacts, possible impacts would be on the town. I first want to give you a brief overview of the articles in the Green Communities Act. What you have in your hand is a presentation that my committee had prepared for 2 forums that we had this past March. One was a stretch code forum for builders, and it was attended by a few of them and also some brokers in town, so that was a good educational forum. And then we had a second General Communities Act forum. Both of them were held here for the public. As you know, since 2008, since we were formed, we've been working to reduce the town's energy use by 20%, as that was stated in our charter, and we have met that goal, and we've saved the town over $200,000 per year. And I do want to qualify that when I say we, it's the royal we. It's really the town departments that have saved the money, you know, mostly the school department, but also other buildings, including Mike Sullivan has been instrumental in saving energy in this town hall. And also the library was another example of where we had an energy audit done, and some of the recommendations have been implemented. So now the committee is setting, can you hear me okay, by the way? Okay.
Yep.
So now we're setting our sights on new targets that will make the town buildings even more energy efficient, will reduce more greenhouse gas emissions that lead to global warming, and actions that will save the town and its residents more money over the long term. And that includes promoting renewable energy generation in the town, implementing more energy-efficient measures in municipal buildings, and then thirdly, we want to promote more energy efficiency of residential buildings in town, because that's really 70% of the whole town's energy use is our homes, which is no surprise for anyone in this community, because we don't have as much industrial and commercial. So to this end, we'd want to be designated as a green community by the state, and that would provide us with some grant monies to start, $148,000 approximately, and also be able to, we qualify for competitive grants in the future, and we'd also get some technical support from the Green Communities Division once we become designated as a green community. And as you see in your handout there's a map that shows 123 Massachusetts towns have already been qualified as green community, and the Department of Energy Resources has dispersed has about $10 million per year in grants to those communities. And we feel as though we're already green for the most part, and we would like to benefit from the formal designation. And I don't want to spend time too much, because we were before you in January, and you're aware that there's those 5 criteria, they're listed there. Providing siting for renewable energy, enable permitting within 1 year for those sites for renewable energy, developing a plan for reducing municipal energy by 20% over 5 years, for the next 5 years. And enacting an energy-efficient vehicle policy and adopting the stretch code for new construction and renovations. So, we chose solar PV generation as the renewable energy technology that we'd like to promote siting in Medfield. And so, last few months, we've worked with the planning board to come up with the draft bylaw. We have Sarah Raposa to thank, our town planner, to give us the initial draft that was modeled on several towns that have solar bylaws, and also there's a model bylaw by the state. So that was the first. And then we met with the planning board a number of times. We had 2 hearings. We got a lot of input from them, and we actually got their approval, which was great, from the planning board of the draft bylaw that, I don't know if you have a copy or not. We can provide you with some copies to review. It includes detailed dimension, density requirements, design standards for lighting, signage, utility connections. It has safety and environmental standards, addresses how you need a screening plan, a buffer, emergency service. You need to address soil erosion, stormwater impacts, defines what decommissioning is, and there's certain procedures that you need to enact at the end of the life of a solar array. And I didn't really talk about how that's what the solar bylaw, I jump back a little bit, you might already know this, of course, but what the solar bylaw is for siting a large-scale ground-mounted solar array. And the large scale would be at least 250 kilowatts, which is the size that the state recommends for a large-scale ground-mounted one, which would cover about an acre. And what you have to do is have as-of-right siting, which means that it would be subject to site plan approval by the planning board, but you wouldn't need a special permit or other discretionary approval. And we decided, working with the planning board, that the best place to have the as-of-right siting would be as an overlay district in the IE area, which is industrial extensive, which is north of West Street. I think in that packet there's a map, the zoning map, that shows exactly where it is. And so, as I said, there's a number of things in this bylaw. It's called Section 19. I'll provide you with a copy that shows and as I was saying, that there's decommissioning, but there's also financial surety to cover the cost of decommissioning. That's something that the planning board was concerned about, and we wanted to make sure that was adequate. And there is a site plan review process in place. Okay, so if we do nothing and not pass the bylaw, then you can still site large-scale solar arrays, but only for municipal use, like for a school or wastewater treatment plant. But now with the bylaw, we'll be able to have public and private developers connect to the grid. And in the future, if we want to extend outside the district, we can do so by amending the bylaw. And already, just to put this in context, 50 Massachusetts communities have passed solar bylaws like this one, and 30 towns or cities have large-scale PV arrays on town-owned land already in Massachusetts. So that's the first warrant article.
Can I just ask just a quick question?
Yes.
Is the area behind the wastewater treatment plant one of the key areas you're looking, is that large enough? And that would be in the IE district, correct?
Yes, it's in the IE district, and it's about 2.3 acres, so it is large enough.
It is large enough,
Yes.
okay.
And there's a couple of preliminary feasibility studies done, and it's something like 300 kilowatts would be the size of the array that they're estimating. And we also I don't know if we have an OATA grant, Office of Technical Assistance grant of $12,500 that we're working with identifying consultant to help us look at that site and several other sites in town to see the feasibility.
Excellent.
So
Yeah, that's good.
that's going to happen. So the second article, Article 35, is adopting the Massachusetts Stretch Code. And this is an energy code, and it requires new buildings and renovations to be built to a higher standard than the base code. It requires buildings to be 15 to 20% less energy than the base code. At this point, there are 134 towns and cities that have adopted the stretch code. I don't know if we have that in there. Yes, you can see which ones they are.
We do.
And the stretch energy codes eventually become state building codes. it's called the Internet, it can be confusing, but there's this International Energy Conservation Code, 2009, is currently what the state base code is. And that is updated, and it's going to become the IECC 2012 code in July, which is equivalent to the state energy code, the stretch code. So everyone is going to be under the current version of the state code this summer. So the main question is, what will the future stretch code look like? Because that's what the idea of a stretch code is, that you're stretching it until the next one gets enacted. So the green community towns are more or less energy adopters. So we don't know exactly what that's going to look like. We certainly have a good idea because we know what the future IECC code looks like, and Massachusetts often adopts that. They're doing some public comments right now, periods to see what the public would like to see in a stretch code. And our understanding is they're waiting, the state's waiting to see how the towns react to the increase in standards this summer. And they'll eventually put out a stretch code, but they're kind of waiting to see how the impact is, what the reaction is to have all the other towns and cities up to the level that the stretch communities are when they passed it in 2008, 2009 at their town meetings. But we waited, so. Okay, and I just want to make a point about the life cycle costs, that the focus is on life cycle costs to make sure that the state doesn't want to make residents to do something that there's not a reasonable payback for. Some of the requirements under the stretch code, builders may not be happy because it's the first cost. There will be somewhat of an increase in first costs. And you see on that flyer or the flyer, two flyers there. They have some numbers about that for large, small, and medium-sized house, and how there is some increase initially, but over the long run, over your 30-year mortgage, over the life of some of the extra insulation or whatever you need to buy to meet it, you'll save money in your energy bills because they'll be lower.
The payback is very fast.
Right. And sometimes for some of those numbers, you get kind of lost in the numbers, but the presentation actually shows a graph. And the takeaway of one of the last pages of the graph shows that the amount of money that you save is higher than the amount of money you pay out over the long term. So, in summary, we were asking you all to support these warrant articles at town meeting. We did meet with the warrant committee last week, and we explained to them about the two warrant articles, and we don't know what the vote is yet, but we've tried to do a lot of education outreach about this. And then as our schedule that shows you at the end of the presentation, our schedule is if these articles get passed at town meeting, then during the summer we're going to develop the energy reduction plan of the 20%. We have a lot of ideas already. Mike and I and the finance director for the schools, Charlie Kellner, met last week to update some of the ideas that we have of how we would use that $148,000 and any other money that we might get, and there are ways that we can reduce. Though the schools have done a great job already, so they've done a lot of the low hanging fruit, but there's still more measures that can be done. And then we had started an energy efficient vehicle policy. We started the inventory of it, so we'd have to work on developing that. And both that and the energy reduction plan would have to be approved by you all and the school committee. And then if that happens, then we can make an application to DOER to become a green community in the fall of this year.
Excellent.
So, questions?
Richard?
I think it just comes down of doing what is the right thing to do. And clearly with our environment, this just is the right thing to do. And I just want to commend you and your board, the amount of work that you guys have put into this, and the presentation and the homework that you've done is outstanding. And I think the arguments that are out there, you've addressed each of those articles, but in my opinion, it keeps coming down to it's what's right to do, for not only the town of Medfield, but, we look at the whole thing with the pension and how that got out of whack and people were not taking responsibility, and then it's like lost because we're so far behind. And I think it's the same with our environment. We keep looking the other way. We keep pretending somebody else is going to do something. I think we need to step up and take that responsibility. And clearly, we're 123 other towns are already green communities in Massachusetts. And I think it's time Medfield joined that. And again, I just commend you for all the effort you guys, and hopefully that, in my opinion, will go through a town meeting.
Thank you.
No, both I think make a lot of sense, and thanks very much for the presentations, very, very common sense and stuff, so it's great. You certainly have my support and stuff for both articles, so.
Great. Thank
Hopefully
you.
we'll get them passed and we can keep moving forward, which will be great.
All right, appreciate.
I second Richard's statement that it's the right thing to do in general. I think that in terms of I guess, saving the planet, if you want to think of it in those broad terms, I think it's the right thing to do. I think it's the right thing to do because it saves us money. It's the right thing to do because it gets a better product for the people in town in terms of the stretch building code. You get a better, more efficient house for all those out years that are going to go on and on and on. And it just makes so much sense that we do this. And then, of course, the big carrot is the $148,000 the state will give us for doing it.
Right, thank you.
So thank you so much. This is...
Right, and I also want to thank our building inspector in town, John Neff. He's been very helpful to us as we are working to educate residents about what the requirements are for the stretch building code, and he's really reached out to the builders as well to explain to them
Good.
how they, taking the long view, and
Yeah.
how they can, tell the home buyers how they're benefiting from it.
Sure, great, excellent, good, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you. Well, that takes care of the first page of the agenda. Now we're on to the second page.
Actually, I think we...
Actually done very well in this.
No, we have one more.
Oh, no, Sarah?
I'm back again.
Yes. Sarah's back, and then I have a couple
Oh, there
things
we
for
go.
you, too.
Oh, that's right.
I'd like to,
We had your 8:15 appointment that we did.
I'm sorry, Sarah, it's too late.
so this, something that says I speak to follow along with, and
Oh, good.
meant to give this to you sooner, but,
Blow her off and didn't get a chance. We missed it, so much stuff.
I am here to present this grant opportunity for your consideration. It came up just last week, and the grant round closes May 6th. This is the only time we could get on your agenda, so I don't have a full grant application filled out yet. So this is the premise, and this is the avenue that we'd be exploring. Jean Manio and I actually would be working on this together. So it's through the Citizens Institute on Rural Design, CIRD, and it connects communities to the resources they need to convert their own good ideas into reality. Selected communities will receive $7,000 to support the planning and hosting a multi-day design workshop, and CIRD will work with communities to assemble teams of specialists most qualified to address the community's identified design challenges. And the total value of the technical assistance services is approximately $35,000. So the purpose of the grant application is to conceptualize the design for a cultural community space, the reuse of the chapel at the state hospital, based on the ideas that have emerged from our own community visioning sessions, as well as those that are proposed through the Wentworth design program, which I'm definitely attending on Thursday. I'm really excited to learn more about that. The request tonight is for your general support for the concept of the redevelopment of the chapel as cultural and community space. I'm looking for authorization to submit it on behalf of the town. And then I'm also looking for a commitment of up to $7,000, theoretically from the State Hospital Planning and Consulting account. This grant does require a match of $7,000, but it can be leveraged in kind. So once we figure out what the budget items would be, things like rooms could be donated, other services, staff time,
Staff, yeah.
volunteer time, all that comes off of
Of
the
the- of the
7,000
town's
cash.
match, okay, yeah,
Yes,
okay,
yes.
yeah.
The bullet points on why we're asking for this now is because town meeting overwhelmingly is in favor to purchase the property and control the development. There are incentives in place that address redevelopment sooner rather than later. And there's a opportunity for integration with other development efforts with the property. This is very timely because SHAC has held the planning sessions with town officials and with the public. And the result is consensus about reusing this the chapel as some community space. Okay, the Wentworth students have created the concepts, but there hasn't really been the connection with the community as a whole. Okay, the Medfield Cultural District has galvanized cultural leaders to work together. The assets in town have been identified. Collaboration has been success. And then community values open space, and there's the initiative to do some senior housing at the site. And this is an opportunity to explore how the chapel space and culture can fit into whatever happens with redevelopment. For example, a culinary solution might help maintain open space, agriculture space, while providing fresh produce to an audience that can't get to a store on foot. Or an arts center could provide daytime programs for seniors and implementing a rotating temporary public art program in public spaces. And also linking to performance space and linking the property to Medfield community as a whole. And that was something that was identified during the public session as it shouldn't just be an area over there. It needs to really interact with the whole of Medfield.
Good.
So like I said, the timeline is approaching quickly. The applications are due May 6th.
Yep.
And then there's a couple of months of interview process through the finalists would be, or the public announcement would be late June. So, you know, it's any grant opportunity. They're always few and far between, and they're always really popular and very hard to achieve. So it's an opportunity to seek.
I like that.
Yep. Reactions, Mark?
I think it's a great idea. I'm certainly in favor of it. We certainly want to apply to get some money here, because that obviously will be another step in moving forward, moving forward with the state
Momentum.
hospital. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
You're okay with the match?
yeah.
Richard?
Yeah, I just want to, again, commend you for going after these grants. And I know it's a lot of time and effort to do that, but I think the more we can do that, the more money comes into Medfield. So thank you for doing that. Mike, just the $7,000, where would that come from? Is that an existing budget, or how would we?
Magic pot I have in the basement.
It's Ken Feeney's budget, I think.
Is that out of your wallet or what?
I think you can pull it from your state hospital environmental, the money you appropriated at town meeting the last few years has been for not only environmental, but for consultants, so I think you could pull it from that account.
Yeah, all part of the same plan.
You're going to be paying for some visioning activities
Yep.
from the new SHAC committee as well, so
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's not there, I'm just saying.
It's there.
I think probably part of the 175,000 we're appropriating for the state hospital.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's
okay.
currently about
Services.
approximately 45,000 existing, so.
Oh, good, so we got some.
And the other thing I just want to add a little bit, Thursday, of course, Wentworth students will put their work on display, but the professor there, which I was very impressed with, wants to continue a partnership with Medfield beyond this year's students. And so I could see, you know, working with the cultural committee and the cultural community in general with that. I know, Gil has been involved. I don't know if you want to add anything with that. Is there a mic there?
No, Leslie, hit the mic.
Yeah, I'm Gil Rogers, and as Richard said, there's an open house this Thursday at Wentworth Institute of Technology, which is right downtown across from the Museum of Fine Arts, just before Northeastern. And it goes from 3 o'clock until 7:30. And it's an open house, so you can come anytime. And really would like to encourage all of you, if you can, to go to that, and the public to come to it. They're looking at a number of different concepts or designs, of which one is a cultural center. That's one of them. Another is a culinary center. Another is a historical museum in a place that the Historical Society could be located. An agricultural center. Richard and I have been there, I guess, 2 times now. And it's a very creative idea. They have lots of very imaginative ideas that fit in. There's over 90 students involved in this, not just from the architectural school, but from other schools. They have the engineering school, construction management, civil engineering. They have the law students involved in looking at bylaws and some of the legal issues relating to the hospital, which I think is very good, very forward-thinking. They're going to present their designs. I've asked Medfield TV to come, so they're going to record it so that everybody can see that can't make it on Thursday. And then, as Richard said, the Professor Ciano wants to continue this next year, and we've already talked about how he can set up the program for the fall and winter semesters of next year to have students look at either continuation of the 5 basic designs or other parts of the hospital. For example, creative multi-use housing, for example, senior citizen housing, but how they can use their imagination and energy to create good ideas for that. So for anybody that is interested in this, I'd really encourage you to come down anytime between 3 and 7:30 on this Thursday, the 17th.
And it's in this certain auditorium.
550 Huntington Avenue, Watson Auditorium.
Okay.
Yeah. And there is parking. That's one of the issues down there, is parking is tricky. But there is guest parking right at the main entrance.
Excellent.
Thank you so much. Anything else?
Just
Do
a
I need a vote,
A
or
vote.
is consensus fine?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we give Sarah the go-ahead to try for the grant.
I agree with that, and so you want a second?
I'll second it, sure.
Any further discussion? I didn't say much about it, but I think it's a great idea. I appreciate your taking the initiative to do it. Someone years ago from the League of Women Voters told me that most planners make more than their salary back in grant money, so thank you so much.
Give it a go.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much,
Thanks,
Sarah.
Thank you.
And now, we're on to page 2. Vote to execute a further extension agreement pertaining to Redgate Farm Realty Trust.
You should have the extension there to sign tonight. In fact, the Kennys have already authorized their attorney to sign on their behalf, and I received that back by
Good,
fax. So,
excellent, good.
We're looking to extend it towards the end of, right now, the closing to the end of May. Part of the issue is the title exam hasn't come back yet. Some part of the title record is an archive, and he's having difficulty retrieving it anyway. That's wholly apart from anything else that's going on.
Sure. Okay.
And it doesn't prejudice our rights at all to extend, so we're well protected. So do we have a motion to extend?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we execute the extension.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
If you just make sure you sign it so I can take it back with me.
Yeah, so do-
Okay. Next, we have a vote to authorize me to sign the Mass DOT standard contract form regarding the Winter Rapid Recovery Road Program.
Otherwise known as the pothole money. You may have heard on the news this week that the governor was authorizing $40 million of money to make pothole repairs to the state and municipal roadways, 30 million of which will be distributed to cities and towns on the basis of the Chapter 90 highway formula. Medfield's share of that is $59,369. It has to be committed by June 30th, and it has to be spent by September 30th.
What does that mean, committed by?
You have to have a project that you're going to, a contract, a bid award, a plan, yes.
So specifically what streets and things like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it has to be, it's supposed to be somehow related to damage caused as a result of the storm, so I believe Ken Feeney was here at your last meeting and talked about what streets he was preparing to do crack sealing and stone sealing on, and
That'd be good, right?
and I talked to him, and that seemed to be the best use, because it's one way of spending the money fairly quickly. You still have to go out to bid and get contract prices on that, and award a contract, so. And that is related to storm damage. The crack sealing in particular is a way of preserving the life of the roads and saving the town potentially a lot of money.
Good.
So if that's acceptable to you people, I will ask Ken to start the process to get some prices on that and get moving on.
Can you just add, and I raised the issue before, just have him relook at that Norwood Road. It was not at one of he gave a long list of streets, but the middle of that Norwood Road, which is a heavy cut-through road, which he agreed with, is in real need of repair.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion then that we go ahead and sign the Winter Rapid Recovery Road Program as laid out by Mr. Sullivan.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yep. Next, we have licenses and permits. Medfield Line Clubs request permission to hold a car wash with the Medfield High School Community Teens Organization back at the Town Hall on Saturday, May 10, 2014. It's going to run from 9 in the morning till noon.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yep. Lowell Mason.
If I can just interrupt for one moment. I'm lost without Evelyn over here handing me my notes. She had a note here. She just wanted you to be aware that you have already committed to a May 17th car wash. There is another one proposed for June and another one for August. She just
Excellent.
wanted to make sure that that was on your radar.
Okay.
Lowell Mason Foundation requests permission to place sandwich boards announcing the Kids Spring Concert on Saturday, April 26th at the Dale Street School Auditorium.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yep. Medfield Green requests permission to place signs April 30 to May 14 advertising Medfield Green Month that will be held at the transfer station.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yep. Medfield High School Science Olympiad Team requests permission to hold a fundraising car wash behind the Town Hall on June 1, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yep.
We got a couple more weekends than we get to fill up with car washes. Tell people that.
There goes the water bill.
I think that was Evelyn what she was concerned about. I have just a couple of items, if you don't mind, if we could go back to action items. There was an item that came in over the weekend that is time sensitive.
Okay.
And that is the comments on the draft Phase 4 and the supplemental Phase 2.
Oh,
Those
yeah.
were the comments that were circulated by Andrea.
Yeah.
And that requires your vote and signature.
Yep.
Do we have a motion to approve the comments?
I'm sorry, I'm unclear what this is.
Comments on the state
Those are the
hospital
PIP
cleanup,
comments?
environmental cleanup?
Pips.
And the other letter was one I had discussed with you last week. I had sent a draft on your behalf to the Army Corps of Engineers.
Oh.
They had asked if the Board of Selectmen was still in support, well, was now in support. We
Supportive.
actually voiced last time our strong non-support for the project. So this is a letter that was drafted by our consultants, which now changes our opinion and supports the project going forward.
And
Generally, these are in conformance with the, actually in specificity. they are-
With the settlement agreement, yeah.
Settlement agreement.
Yeah.
And Mark, you've seen both letters, you're okay?
No, I haven't seen them, no. I mean, that's been paid Stolz's jurisdiction.
Yeah, and they've been approved by John Thompson. Bill's reviewed them as well as, I believe, Mr. Harney.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I move we sign both letters.
I'll second that.
I have two last pages.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Yep.
I'll let Bill go, but then I have one more thing for you.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Is that citing the warrant?
That's it, yes. That's why they're here.
They're not leaving the room tonight unless they sign the warrant.
Oh, yeah, sign these
Yeah,
big,
and I'm
huge
gonna
pieces
show
of
you exactly where to
paper.
sign them.
You can all play John Hancock with that stuff.
I know. Have so
I
much
just
fun.
have two items related to the state hospital. Both are wrapped around the mediation and the impact on the mediation. Last Friday in the Medfield Press, there was the invitation for bid for the water main work that will be associated with the new water tower. And I've asked DCAM, John O'Donnell in particular, to coordinate with DPW. The plan right now for the remediation at the C&D area, which will begin, they'll start bringing in trucks and mobilizing probably in June. They'll start the work in July, and they'll try to finish in end of low water season in October. Will require them to truck down the power plant road and down the hospital road to Route 27. And I just asked to make sure that the water main activity, which is coming up Hospital Road, doesn't impact the truck traffic. Because of two things: we don't want the trucks going through residential. Number two, if the trucks back up and can't get down the road, then DCAM will be faced with charges, change orders and more expenses. So I have asked that they get together and coordinate that. The other item is also related to water and to the C&D area. With the passage of the transfer of the water tower to the town of Medfield, John O'Donnell has asked me, as part of the mediation committee, to see if we can determine when actually the property transfer will take place. And his particular concern is that the water tower, as it exists now, is supplying water to the fire suppression system up there, but also runs a line down to the C&D area. And their plan during the remediation is to use that water to keep down the dust and airborne asbestos. So I think he's looking for two things, Mike. He's looking for assurances that if it does transfer to us before they begin the work down there, that we'll still allow them access to that line and that valve, which is part of the water tower.
Okay.
And if it doesn't happen, then it's not if it physically doesn't transfer before then it's not a problem.
Water and Sewer's meeting Thursday night, so I'll review that with them. The intent is to build the new water tower before taking the old one down.
Yes, I understand.
So that should be available to them for what they're scheduled to.
Yeah, I just think he just wants to be. You guys aren't going to shut us off as soon as you get the water, as soon as you get the old water tower, you're not going to shut off that valve that's going to bring the water down to where we need it, are you? And obviously the answer is no, but we.
Right. I actually have a 10 a.m. meeting tomorrow with DCAM's real estate development to talk about the transfer and how that's going to work. So
That's
For
great.
one thing, there was no emergency preamble, so the transfer of the land can't take place for 90 days.
I think there was an emergency.
no emergency preamble.
Oh, I thought there was. Yeah.
Nope.
Because of what was water related, I thought there was.
Nope.
It may explain some things.
And, they're just approving, I think they're going to try to approve the design of the water tower Thursday night.
Okay, so they get a ways to go, yeah.
So they do have the bids out for the water mains, which are,
Yeah.
but we,
I think pretty soon too.
yes, I believe the week of town meeting, I think, the problem is then we have to survey the easement on the state hospital property. It's okay while we're in the roads, but we need to have a surveyed plan.
That's my 10 o'clock meeting
10
tomorrow.
o'clock meeting, yeah. But that could take some time to get the engineering done for that.
There's two surveys that ECAM will need to do. They're also going to be surveying the boundaries of the parcels, since that's part of the purchase
same part of it,
legislation.
yeah.
And I don't know if DCAM's considered doing both things at the same time.
They will be done separately.
Okay, of course.
The good thing is that I believe they can work on the water main in the street, so that won't necessarily hold them up, because they can go all the way down from the well all the way up to where it goes on the state hospital property.
They will be coming, but the trucks will be coming out of the power plant road down the lower end of Hospital Road onto Route 27. So you know right by
Right.
the railroad tracks, it comes
Yeah.
up just one street up, you know, from where the airport.
Right, yeah, yeah.
road is. So
Yeah, I don't, depending on where the mains go on the road, I don't think there should be a big problem.
Oh,
There's-
that just
there's
is
not,
worth
yeah,
checking in just to make sure.
yeah.
That's it for the hospital.
All for the hospital. The last thing I have for you is we have gone over the warrant articles extensively, but you have never officially voted to sign the warrant.
Sign and post.
Sign and post, yes.
Do we have a
Mr. Chairman, I
motion?
move we officially sign the warrant.
I'll second
Sign
that.
and post, yeah.
And post. I'll
Post,
second
yeah.
that.
And I'll stay with you after the meeting to show everywhere you need to sign.
Yeah, so we don't sign in the wrong spot.
There was also, I did have a request from Nancy Benatti this morning that the Norfolk County Mosquito Control has asked that you support their budget request. I believe it's $57,000. That isn't appropriated by town meeting. It comes on the cherry sheet as a state assessment.
Okay.
And after the presentation you had from
Great, yeah.
the director a few weeks ago, I think you certainly can appreciate all they're doing for the town.
No.
Incidentally, also, we did start taking down the beaver dams.
Oh, excellent.
But it is a slow process. You have to remove them piece by piece so you don't create a flood. So
Well, I mentioned the water level on White Street, almost to Harding Street, is at record levels. I've never seen the water up that high.
we're supposed to get 2 inches tonight, so.
Yeah, it's cranking.
Well,
Inch and a half, 2
it's,
inches.
I wouldn't be surprised if it goes up to the road. I mean, that's from the dams that are there.
Yeah.
I've never seen the water that high.
Yeah.
Well, that's great, though. They're working on that to gradually
Yeah.
take them down.
The
That's
problem is they still make it very difficult to trap beavers. I mean,
yeah.
it's very
Yeah.
tough process. They allow you, you can get a permit for 10 days and then you get
What's that,
another
yeah.
permit for 10 days and it's the rigmarole you have to go through. I'm hoping now that Lowell started to have beaver flooding problems, that maybe something will
Yeah.
get done, and that they'll realize this is a problem statewide.
Yeah.
So,
That's good.
So we have something pending about Arbor Day? Oh, no, I'm sorry. We have a motion that was made and seconded to sign
Sign
and
and
post the
post.
warrants. All those in favor?
Aye.
Yes. And then, do we have a motion to support the mosquito control budget?
So move, Mr. Chairman.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And then we have,
I also want to just raise a point on the town of Dover on the cell tower before we close.
okay, go ahead.
I received a call from some of the neighbors on the Evergreen Way area, and the town of Dover is going to have a ZBA hearing, I believe, on the 1st of May. Actually, if town council is still here, if I could maybe get him to just peek in for a second, to construct a proposed 100-foot tall cell tower behind the property of Evergreen Way, near the Dover-Sherburne High School. It's on private property off of Junction Road. And there's several concerns. I think one is a town selectman, is a town-wide concern, and I know there's also concerns of abutters that are there. One, they want to have the access road that actually would come on to Spring Valley, the stub that continues past Evergreen Way, and then there is a private driveway that goes into a home that's in there. And apparently what they're going to do is extend the access past the public driveway, or the private driveway, to the cell tower property that's there. And I think there's just a lot of issues, to be raised. I think Mike has correctly pointed out that the federal government now is in the driver's seat and has taken away a lot of controls that before the towns had. So there's not as many areas to object because it is a cell tower. But there's a lot of issues raised, issues of, traffic study and environmental impact statement. of having that come out onto Evergreen Way, which is a neighborhood of a large number of children that are in there. We heard last week Ken Feeney say that the road of Evergreen in that area, he deliberately has the stone and the seal, and it's not made for the heavy-duty traffic that perhaps could result from that. So I think the question from Medfield's point of view, why can't the access road go out onto either Dover Sherburne High School onto Junction? Why does it have to come into a Medfield neighborhood? Do we have any recourse whatsoever of that access road coming onto Evergreen Way? And is there a position we can take as a board or as a town at their ZBA hearing expressing some of these concerns? Mike also correctly pointed out that we're going to build a water tower by late 15 or early 2016 that would have space, and the water tower is actually taller than the proposed cell tower that's going to be there. Their argument is that AT&T needs better cell reception in that area. Well, it would make sense if it was on the water tower. It would give them even greater cell reception area. Why is it necessary to have this additional tower right in the backyards of the Evergreen Way neighborhood that's there? So I'm not sure, do we have any legal recourse? Is there anything legally the town can look into or do concerning this? I know it's all in Dover itself.
I have one thought, which is that if the public way does not go up to the Dover line, then they have no right to get across that last foot of Medfield.
I think it does.
It's not a public way. I don't believe it's a layout that was extended to the Dover line. And
It was extended.
the planning board in olden days used to lay them out to the adjacent property when there was a subdivision plan submitted. They would require the developer to lay them out so that the adjacent land would not be landlocked.
So that's not a part of Spring Valley?
It's part of Spring Valley, but I don't believe it was
It really has no bearing here. They would, even if there were nothing, they'd be free to approach property owners for an easement to put a driveway and get back to this.
Yeah, I think one question I asked Donna O'Neill to look up today, and she produced a copy of the map showing that layout, is who owns the layout? Because in former times, the layout used to be owned by the property owners to the middle of the street. And more recently, the developer keeps the land and the property.
Developers have the option to retain the ownership of frequently they
Yeah.
So the issue is, in this case, whoever was, this goes way the heck back, I believe, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's probably 50 years anyway, yeah.
The developer did not retain the ownership, and therefore, the abutters on either side own the development. That's a private access. We're not talking roadways, stubs for roadways, for subdivisions, has nothing to do with this at all. The fact of the matter is, what was alluded to is correct, that the Federal Telecommunications Act, more recently, we tacked on additional amendments under the guise of Middle Income Relief Act, giving them even more authority not to have to deal with local regulators. So, it depends, the starting point is, what kind of a bylaw does Dover Sherburne have in place?
Do you have the microphone, Mark?
What kind of a bylaw does Dover Sherburne Dover have in place that regulates cell towers, if at all? So that's the starting point, but it's not the be-all, end-all, because any time that a carrier can establish that they have a quote-unquote significant gap in coverage, that trumps local zoning.
Oh, yeah.
So that's what the issue comes down to. This is heavily weighted in favor of the telecommunications industry. It's at the federal level.
But can they determine where that access road is? Why can't, if there's
That's a
other...
negotiable point. I mean, it's something that, you know, you can approach the applicant who may, you know, there's a number of scenarios for how these things work out. Sometimes it's a private contractor or a third-party contractor that's going to build a monopole and then have tenants on it. Sometimes it is one of the wireless carriers themselves.
This is AT&T and Bayside Communications. The interesting part is it's going on the land of a Dover resident who gets his access down that stub to his road.
Yeah.
And then the access road will come down, basically down his
His driveway and then keep going.
Well,
That-
once you get past construction, the access is minimal. They go in to maintain the things periodically.
Yeah, and then that's it.
2 trips a month per cell phone company, so it
Right,
depends
yeah.
how many are on the array, but it's at least
Yeah.
2 trips a month. I don't know how they're gonna make the turn with the lengths of antenna coming through the neighborhood and coming down that curve as well.
Oh, I think they assemble that in pieces.
Well,
But,
just,
yeah.
yeah, but, I mean, look at
The
So-
toilet brush, you mean? It looks like a toilet brush.
So is there any recourse the town would have as far as that going through a residential neighborhood like
No.
that, or?
The recourse we may have is to argue that we are going to be erecting a water tower and providing for space on that tower for antennas, and that therefore there will be adequate coverage in that area.
First of all, it doesn't exist right now. Second of all, a government entity cannot require a wireless carrier to go on their facility on public
We
property.
wouldn't be requiring it. We would just be providing access if they
Yeah, but it
so
doesn't
chose.
exist right now. It's what exists right now.
The one in Dover doesn't exist right now, and if it's denied, how long does that take to wend its way through the courts?
They handle on a very expeditious basis.
We're gonna build our tower very expeditiously.
Well, again, even if you
Oh, yeah.
even if you erect the tower, Dover can't deny on the basis of you've got to go over to Medfield and be on the town's tower. That implicates another issue, which is, it's called the dormant
Yes,
commerce clause.
But can they deny it on the basis that there is adequate coverage for cell towers in the area with
Yes.
the provision of this tank? Yeah.
Well, no, without the provision. You take what's now, there are engineers and consultants that will act, and it's like anything else, is you have your consultant, we have ours, and you go out and determine what's the coverage. What does the carrier need, and what will this provide, and hypothetically, what would the difference be if you went over to the state hospital property? I don't know what other coverage there is in Dover, to be perfectly honest, but, I mean, that's the starting point. Again, the starting point is, where does Dover permit it as of right? Why aren't they there? If that's so, they would have to establish that they couldn't get adequate coverage from the permitted sites if Dover in fact has permitted sites. Then
They
you
would
look at
right
where are
downtown.
there other towers in town, in Dover, or even surrounding towns for that matter, and again, could you AT&T go on any of those? Satisfy the gap that way.
Well, I think I mean, I would suggest to them that we have a water tower that we're going to own very soon on the state hospital property, and that we'll make that available to them. So
Well, we had an AT&T rep in several weeks or months ago that we had a discussion with about potential sites, so we have a contact person.
We'll put it there until we get a new water tower, then we'll move them over to the new water tower. Under our zoning, I know that you're not allowed access to industrial property through a residential zone, which is what it strikes me as happening here. I don't know if that would apply to.
It's not a,
It's an R2 right now. My understanding is that the property owner, the person who lives and accesses his house through Medfield, is leasing a whatever 100 by 100 square foot
Yeah.
parcel
But
in
it
the
really,
middle of his property.
it may be a residential zone, but it's really an industrial use.
Well,
well, again, that applies to
That's why it's
zoning
going-
within the town.
That's why it's going before Dover.
The extraterritorial effect of zoning is very limited. In other words, the affected Medfield, binding affected
I
Medfield
see what you
zoning on Dover
Dover
is,
is, yeah.
any more than Dover is on Medfield.
But you don't think, Mark, that if we control that stub street coming off of Spring Valley there, that you think they would still get access somehow? I mean, say the town took that little stub of Spring Valley by eminent domain.
But that's his access to his house right now, it's
Well,
always been.
we might give him access to his house.
See, the issue from the neighborhood, I don't think anybody's complaining about, I mean, everyone recognizes the precedence that's given to telecommunications, you know, at the federal level as well as.
Bill, could you just use the microphone, then people at home that are still awake can hear?
Yeah. I don't have a dog in this fight, but I mean, you know, some of the neighbors asked me to get involved. If you look at the map, you can see that's one of the few maps talking about anything anywhere near the hospital property that my name's not on. But the main concern, again, is the trucks coming down through the residential neighborhood, regardless of what the traffic is. It's it's not a regular delivery of something. I mean, it's a company delivering or accessing one of their sites. And the argument would be from them is a simple question to Dover is, why aren't you coming down through your own town as opposed to coming through Medfield?
Yeah, because they have no access.
I think it's all wetlands.
Well,
I
they have
think.
the same access to.
We updated our bylaw several years ago in anticipation, and actually at that time, there was an expansion of wireless carriers. Now the industry is consolidating again. AT&T has been actively involved in takeovers. So they're one of the few major players remaining. That being said, what we can anticipate is a proliferation of these things. So we need to get used to them because it's the old pogo line. We've seen the enemy and it is us. Because they're, as you can tell from this location, it's a classic example. It's no longer commuters on major corridors using their cell phones. It's people in their houses using their tablets and their smartphones and everything else where they want to have service. And so therefore, the carriers are going to, they've already ruled out the satellite option for whatever reason, and they're back to on-the-ground facilities. They will, the good part is they won't be as tall as they've been, but the bad part is there'll be more of them. And they're going to be going where people are. So you're going to see them coming in to Medfield, and anywhere there is any kind of concentration of housing, they're going to want to put these up. And as I said, you've got very limited basis for objecting to them. We've done some things in our own bylaw to protect aesthetics, which is one of the bases you have, but beyond that, your hands are pretty much tied because Congress has determined that this is in the national interest.
In fact, right.
It's not the tower that's
Yes.
being objected to
Yes.
in principle. You know, the prime objection is access through.
Well, that's something to bring up
Although-
at the hearing, and it may be something that's negotiable. They may not be,
Although I will say, in fairness, we have had cell towers, we have 3 cell tower carriers up on Mount Nebo, and it goes right through the middle of residential neighborhoods to get there. We've never had a complaint.
Is the town getting
Any money?
yeah?
About
Yeah.
over $100,000,
What
about
are you getting here?
nothing.
That's it.
I don't know whether Dover will get anything or not, but, I'm not saying, but in terms of traffic,
Yeah.
it's nothing. But
not talking big trucks either.
no.
You're talking,
The other thing is, you ought to be aware of, I spoke with Dave Maxon and Mark today. We currently have requests from T-Mobile and Sprint to do some work on the Mount Nebo water tower to add to their,
AT&T acquired, I believe,
no. AT&T did not acquire Sprint or did not acquire
T-Mobile.
T-Mobile, no. That was blocked, I believe, by I think T-Mobile and Sprint tried to merge, and it was blocked by the FCC. So we still have 3 independent carriers on the Mount Nebo water tower. We have AT&T, T-Mobile, and Sprint. And Sprint and T-Mobile now have submitted plans for, which is part of the lease agreement. They could submit plans, and we could not reasonably withhold approval for them to do work on it. The question we have is, are they adding new antennas, in which case does it?
Expanding the arrays that they already have.
Yes, so
As opposed to just
we have to
replacing.
review the plans that they've submitted, but Mark is right, that you're gonna see a lot more of this, because everybody's got cell phones, everybody's got tablets, everybody's got, televisions.
Security systems in
smart
your home, there's all
televisions.
kinds of things that operate on this now.
Well-
It's all intelligence.
Well, and landlines are all going away, so that people are going, they have to have the service. If they're gonna have just the cell phone as their only means of communication.
Mr. Chairman, what was your point on the town controlling the stub of Spring Valley?
Oh, well, the town, I would think, could deny access then for the purpose of, that was my point with in some places in town, the public
think-
way didn't go all the way up to the town boundary.
I-
It stopped
I
feet
recall.
short of that, specifically to prevent people from driving into the adjoining town. I know that they did it on the south side of town that way in some places to
I
prevent
th-
people from building in Norfolk and driving through Medfield.
I think when that house was built, we tried to deny access for the driveway from that street, and we were not successful. He did want to get Medfield Town Water, and we were able to deny that. But I don't believe we were able to deny access for the driveway. I don't recall why. Even though it's not a public way, I believe there's a layout on, an approved layout on it.
Well, a
subdivision
residential
plan.
access is one thing, but an access for a cell tower or a business use like that is something more.
It's
That could be
considered
overburdening the easement, Mark?
I'm not sure it's considered it's like a telephone pole, I think. It's
Well,
not
it could be,
considered.
but that doesn't help us. It's highly unlikely that we took ownership of the stub, for starters.
Well,
It's ownership of a 2-foot strip.
Right, but it's much more likely that the stub, particularly if it's not constructed, that'd be the starting point. When we take a road, it's a constructed road, so if there's something showing as paper, and we go to do the taking, and this would have way predated me, so.
So where is,
Lord knows what we
The
did.
main plow, by the way, it's paved. It's paved because the two homes that are on Evergreen Way. their
Driveways.
Come off that stub.
That stuff, yeah.
So you may even be plowing it.
Yeah, well, I'll check too and make sure that it is an
We could do some
accepted
more
way.
research, but, the legalities aside, the better, well, I guess if this is basically being constructed on private property, that explains why he's coming in that way. I don't know what the options are to come in
Yeah,
otherwise.
I think if you look at that map, they'd have to get some sort of an easement across
There's
someone
wetlands,
else's
oh.
property to get out to.
well, he'd have to either go out through Dover Urban High School where the parking is.
Yeah, and they're not gonna let it.
It's all wetlands there, though, because
Right.
we hike in that and back at Dover High School, they'd never get a road through there. Can't imagine them build a road through the middle of, there's a brook there, there's a river there. Yeah, that'd be pretty, I'm sure that's why they.
Well, I know you're going to have neighbors that are coming in the next meeting to try to express some of those concerns, so.
Well, don't underestimate the Dover neighbors either.
Well, if the neighbors are interested, where they really should go is to the Dover Board of Appeals hearing on.
Absolutely.
Right, they tend to
first
do
of-
that.
yeah.
Here.
I would hope that someone from Medfield would be there as well.
Yeah.
Hopefully from the board or something.
I talked to Dave Maxon, he was gonna see if he might be able to make it too, so,
Do we still have a wireless committee? Wireless meeting?
yeah, yeah.
The date
He's
for the-
basically it. That's what he's coming by tomorrow, yeah, yeah.
I'm sorry, yeah, thank you.
Because, there's a whole industry, a supportive industry that goes out and scopes sites and then tries to broker them and put carriers together with property owners to fill in grids,
Oh,
so.
it's big business, yeah, yeah. And as you said, there are gonna be a lot more of these, so people need to get used to it.
The inquiry we had was an area that AT&T has felt they had a deficiency down in the south part of Medfield.
They do, yeah. And in fact, our police department and fire department, police department, I think particularly, is looking at trying to put some sort of a tower over Norfolk
Yep,
to provide access to the southern part of Noon Hill.
right.
Because they can't get a tower in Noon Hill. And AT&T was looking for a spot, but you know, so much of that land is controlled by the trustees, and the trustees won't permit towers on their property. And we did put them in touch with the Sportsman's Club, but they were not interested.
Yeah.
So,
And the leftover parcel from Southern Acres.
Southern Acres, yeah.
Town has some land there?
No, we didn't take it because it's too steep.
Oh,
It's all, it was, they put in rocks to support the
Yeah,
slope.
Jacob Cushman Way there, it's called.
Very
It's a
end
little
of the
cul-de-sac.
Yeah, there's actually a lot in there.
Yeah.
So when we took the road, when we accepted the road, we would not accept that lot even though, because we were concerned about liability. So the developer has been sitting on it for years, not happy about it. But, and it's been offered to us a number of times, and again, it's a case of, it's very steep, and at the time the developer put the reinforcing in, he didn't use, you know, the kind of massive rocks that the planning board was prepared to recommend. Unfortunately, I was on the planning board that far back, and the town's consulting engineer gave the okay for much smaller rocks, and the kind of rocks that if you're actually walking on them would move, and so we're concerned that were we to own that and kids go up there, and just wouldn't be a good thing.
Right.
so getting back to our agenda, anything further, Mike, Chris, on the information items you want us to comment on?
Just wanted to remind you that as soon as town meeting's over, you need to get moving on appointing a hospital use committee.
Yeah, I was going to mention that too, that we've had a couple more expressions of interest. Anybody in town that's interested in doing master planning for the hospital, please get us your expression of interest and some quick credentials so that we know what you've done.
And has the legislation been filed now, Chris, for the purchase of the hospital land?
I don't think it's been officially filed yet.
Do you know, Bill?
I don't think it's been,
It went in through I think through the general councils and was approved, and I think it's, John Hardy said he thought that it was going to have a hearing tomorrow.
A committee hearing, so it has been filed?
Yeah.
yeah, I haven't seen a number on
I
it
couldn't
yet.
find a number.
Yeah.
I went on the website looking for a number. I didn't call Amanda in Denise Garlick's office to see to get a number, but supposedly John said he was told they were going to be having a hearing on it, they thought tomorrow.
Good. Mark, Richard, you guys want to do selectmen's reports, or do you want to save them till the next
I
time?
wouldn't mind saving them until next week, if that's okay.
That's
It's
fine.
getting late and stuff like that.
Do you want to have a short meeting? We'll post a meeting for, 7 o'clock at the library.
We're meeting
Night
next
of
week.
town meeting?
Next week's the 4th Tuesday, right?
Yeah, next week's the fourth Tuesday.
Yes, we're meeting next week
So
anyway.
we are meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I guess, then do you want to post one just in case we need to
Yeah,
meet
Evelyn
before
always posts
town?
one the
Post
following
one
week.
for the
Town
night,
meeting,
yeah,
right.
in case there's any last minute
Good.
action, yeah.
Yeah, but we'll get together next Tuesday, yeah.
And we should start, Mike, getting the annual calendar reactivated and really working on that. We've kind of ignored it a lot. I mean, you did a nice job of coming up with 6 months' worth, and then we
Okay, yeah.
crashed.
Well, Chris and Evelyn got the town report out today. What is it, 330 pages?
308 pages for the
You're kidding me.
2013 annual town report.
And
How
I
much,
think
308
the
pages?
warrant was, what, 90-some pages?
Yeah.
Oh, because of all the bylaws?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's 45 articles, too, so.
All right. So we got to go start signing.
Okay.
All
So,
right, we're adjourned.
of all the
So
years.
moved.
Yeah, all the years.